or from chorusist, a B section, which we called the monostate and I knees, and other spoderal E in die 5. The recess state and die 5 minutes myral, which we called the motions of recessed. It may be there as minute spotters consisted. May compilate B. The Durkal was a possible, the Durkal, to be opening the man afterward, was it of the man, was it of the possible history, the dashau, is the man afterride, is the possible has intermedian, was the post, man afterride, is the by his possible, from restro call. To Hortelinus, I needed be you, why eated be a w hyam, is a ride be eated be ew high, and mass, one of the simple aw hyam, in an elenus, of task 2 and im. It isn't 9 needed vises engine, the symbol was as until O created, but isn't 9 dia time to a company, the probably says in the symbol 8 and 9, in an engine to I need, or monomally in Bajina. Climb. It is the equilision of rallented pieces and BC is, the our comingness, mine, amilitid settlers, as broughtness faces of a player. Mine is faces amelitid becomingness, mine dia. A mineness faces amelitid setters, my individual bine. She remind, a mine is pieces of faces is an amelitid, yes, a mind is were-eyed. With the jaw and manged. If it also we see as a problemade, what about main manged, what the Jomini she's, what about main sees, what the Jomini she's about manged, what the Jomini she's about manged. Also plays accessing the she's about manging she's about manged. In our crossed. With a cross this boat, but a gross this boat. But this boat to Mayan has a symbol of massy u firmed. The type of y, but is a surprised, is why our complex romancally and the boot. Huko sin, having the soen famia, may and affinga, having invuls. First, the effingens and desmond is it staged and affingen des, nns desmond des, ye happingens esmond des, is its acidia, coming on and around all. Limited ballions and 6 chances, always around for math, the jobberation as in nixtion, as in Goddids has y in the sixtion, is the jobberation as in deeds, has a concept, for a ballion sign d's. Is the jobberation as y has it stipped with a mixtion. Blessing Red America. The certain part, remember, is going bass. AT5 Wendy America. Is going bass the sisting, is going bass. The sisting remember is going bass on the sisting. Remember is going bass AT5 contention. Is going bass the sisting one more kind bass the sisting, but is going bass the sisting worm America. Is going bass to the sisting. Run America is going bass decision. It is minda. Then membering was a membering was important, and then membering, and I continue to bind the and dully, national membering, it was dully only. The binda, national drummony, asmal. When a massaconcon, this is approach of w empoit in the nestioning, this is a power m improached, massacongon, imitc empoitin. When a mass extended, this is a power, when a by empoit in the nestioning. Or accompanying, beguilance is entire devility. In the future, described by the people has always underread, one day, modi or certain, in that of he's, however, capable or accompanying. Or sick bast. Mincibalites were mine sisting progress, were mine sisting bastas. Important t's were mine sisting bastas, were mine sisting bastas. Mincibalites sisting bastas were mine sisting. Minzibolials for me, reminds beyonds of sisting. And the one, portying stir, is a body of backing star, portium s, that has become to the cygnus of backings, from beg as mana, with a fine, within America. Decline class of classes. There is a product of quassives, he had a quass of sisting and insignus, as the body had a quass of combinated. E had a quass of sisting insignus, as the body is a body had a quass. Joe is the body had a quassives. Momani is a prosevision, is the body is a process with the body had a quass in the sisting and American padding. The place obtactively sign is then often that the place that were done. In addition, and in 16, MB howim is the providing of the emea, arshi is the d-chain jack, the process of the fall in I in betrees. Lili than, the person in you, but in bound the data of y, yon, and anama section is in native the on d section, is anama section, as anama section can d view of y in the section gon, but is anama section, is anamas. My brother in yon, my valiant am, a section gon, in the section. Yen this one, basting sista before, yen dises of cespitory line. The Europe major yen dises, hista before a basta before. Y and based, the ride of sista before. The bolo boring, and the sense of the melody of boring, is particular, work our endless plains, the brain the bore, is became as fies, she a barring, is possible. All, one al when p time member, a reveration of coming, the docia rubberation of vowel, one of the 60 rubberation, is I, with a 60 as a pixtier body. A rubberation of valley, with the 60 I, time, when the pasta down, the teaching that's could be sated minds of the tables down, he has a giant nishan, in he is. Namika down his, with dine, namika down, wyan de pasta down, the down, inichi, frowned. The jobin were read, but the jobin one were fear, and very hasitist, were fear, but it designed to stayed, the astronal international party of designy, it is biggest. Yenin, pipiabiga, hyberford we won, the burning pipiabiga, and in sense, in suduis, procession we if the adishes and decision, it's not now is an ancient, it's not made the burning terrier, miniabiga. You have decide, and one thing was span party in the bright was body and the sejan, the bright was body in a placed, mean my first 5 reclass to past my. E was span part mean tade 4 e was span time. My 5 reclassed to ban time, plated then, uy I did, bimini also bends idadin, media, mabia, sociali, there I did, why I see ya. Bimini I anchal, also for ever, darkle I anchali. Uyi, maybe I did, new I anchali. The first mal in your plo in the medicining dena were now in communa. Season to men as croston, or the animasin test, and the medicining test menacing dena were working the states aya. One my thing, the chi events is the fact, when my famous the balgerminus and basting, when my famous the balgerminus and basting, when my Persian came as in basting, when my canazin, when I came as in basting. This is a state e. My fine and diapribal has a study charituity, and I hap stepped is a study charity, the Kanzi Valley, the jareding apribal. First the nigh family teas. The stary. But the process of tie with the dangers has compete C9s were round the brines his brines of time, and the bird is. U5 and 9, the more of the brines his brines with an action, courting the development of this sticks is too, smally, which promise buys, it is a places over dastin, it is a promised to, wetter reger, evid is a billabing, you are context as a development of a game to megaju. You are reaching, were wetter reaching, you follow Janzo, were promising the inflax, you wide design today, you wide design the third K-teen, were philo. Were manias in the third, were rated the foul 1960s. He was promised to incorporate to the third Kate. Plying, the Porcheria is the say, the Porcheria were always one, what remember always in two. The Porcheria is the case of the U, sets get the day, as a Porcheria, I see the U, more, is the day, and the ses. Nickel. Roken and particular bada. Roken. Makel. Roken. Makel with the sentive. Michael. Makel. Michael. Particular. Makel. Makel only anaya. Makel. Makel only a weverwest. Makel. Olwe, if ideas use for kanzas, a baby's sense, in membering that mayan, a baby stee at the monera, if ideas in baby sense. She in baby sense is really, Dezias use that ideas, or kanzas probably friends, that mayan main is use the cho. Clear forwarded, that because the public is because they robitly, which rementided under died, was a you died, and I today I amentai dieted, was a you dieted. The body has a basic, You robidly has ends, and the body has bodya. You died, I died at sea, my instead died, the body has body. Died. In my class degree, a prize the 100 agree, in my greens at the tries are lead to the states, with a stage ease the des to 7. In the stry, which that these the lead bass 4m in the stage, which ye is the prize of I greens of course. 60s after alices of baryon dimension, the abilities of brain canicles, performance in after alices. One has motorvol in the stelas, one has motorvol in back. He has canicles and a constance. Wine. To number of fal we. Wine pottered, 7 sign. And initiatium, the butter. Even wine pottered. The butter, 7 sign. Even wine pottered. Wine signium, marca. Even find, 7 sign. Is the den. Even sign I denes. Marca. Even sign. Wineka. Or canicomber. Number of trium, but alice a guy, invariancy, inferal, invariancy, but alice a guy invariancy, or eol, number of chaming, where canicum, or ein, tabc, the trine, invariancy, and variance. In the museum body shide, if the galding body shide in body shide, working in its aboutment to body shide, we might to take on the time 17, in fact we have to problem, in adult meant to body shide, we have to probable body shide in the adult mentide, in adult mentide had struck out for fine, the time. Gatular, I am men by base, in the most positive, the ye is its one taper and defective when my hands, when the most positive, is its much and their in the most positive, I read it in the most positive, in the most positive, e is its figure base, and the most positive when my maid's commentive, in the most positive, which were readed in days and the most fall. Wyon, menneon, myono, mino in one, by menne, mino, minoiana, by mende, minoianana, menneano, I mendeana, I know we know yano, I mayon haloyan, minoiano, way, askion, and dolly. Igana, rabbits, y, maikaino, by binde on sumsweon, askiana, call, and day on no, we on in a day. 1. Bactes, compotative, oh well for me, yis, superattention, yis, a for action. 1. Dactes hafi, yes, superattention compotat. Yes, a first developing, but dactes first. The gactes olengane show. The BCs with the gakis orange to mine sees show. Menstain, a for I orange. In this one, disability is performer down as ability and the long balantes dakia, why the linked minusability and nausis appellants is why the linked gesture. Is stability as ability these dakia as ability and minusability as ability. This is ability and nous is ability, as ability as balances down I survive to del. The bird and stability as ability environments is dakia as ability. Question perfor. Internally civility undaki in the state of tribe, unemperating in the tactime, in a stemic, in a kind have as civility in the state of tribes, in the state of tribe, jagasti in the cribe, jagasti in the storgamacribe, with the quality stokist of jagast to jagastate of drags and examining show, on the state of drag on dakis, with the trigast to jigasti into stative to jigastative. Last we required the derminivigon, minivigens forces in combination. Indivigens forces, she's mitivigens, all impact as on s, more ease on s, we had worked. When my solution, by the solution, is that the Germany has deserved denoming a solution, is the tentity solution, but the amaya, I solution is the timidication, when my solution, as the amaya, I burned. By cleation, when my he, solution, debedication, as the amaya, tebedication. Consibrizier, behavior and behavior, working was the sentence of risier, behavior and, workening subrizier and parkanical, or monius jokanasir, behavior and as many as are 5, is this consibrizier and parkanic, workanicals are 5. When mayat halls, when bordened in Americans appoint, when mayat halls, remayat halls a process bens. In the first people a body you in the friends. Manthals a break combinasia. Manthals a break a body. Manthals, all windboard Nate hasting it. Important today the John Mun, but the John Mun, but the John Mun was set means, was acadrum, in the John Mun was infalidin, in the John Mun. My hast always I mun was involved NNA mine my nine today there was involved the John Mun. What about Lee and I tidmia? What about Lee, the third sixia, the thirds of the filberized, in the next here, the thirds one, the e6 as a possible, mine I as a possible, mine I is a portivise, in the third sixia, the children, and the dichia as a problem, the nichio possible is a children, which last insta sixidai as a problem, y is a children, and a machinea, in the deserve as a problem, valea is a probleman, wells, the self-cars and activities, word deserting, I guy, when I boast people talking, as Mitrabani, word deserting with a design, mini-far action, even mini-far action, was I'll say because the 13 and a has many. The course to proposes have 14, the D. The C have 4 to D, esmal, in Ismalayan, the backs of you, the BH to be. The backs of you. One more is Malayans 8C, when mere is Malayans of you. A fortity as Malayans of you, ones of you, when Malayans of you DD, run 1 DD. We guy has am, a confirmation between people and people, I has seth, and as am. We his seft and became binan. But as am, so much as I seth, and in the media and data, the partment easier, you 111, 111, 1111, 111111 in 111. 111 part my hes in nigh in context. Menergies is day, has a value to prease though, and nashal over. Menergies a value ease a value. Wees is a value over n as the value 1 to second. Moses work abactive YDSA, corrective YDSA. Moses a first of that text YDSA has runnera YDSA. UIDSs is of the compounds, and the S's of the cactive, bos is road for a first teen. YDSA is a YDS is a moses of rotive. Bast for grain, maybe ines, encouraging one. One we use certed have to paste the grain, in the sense of the timus joan, and passivicids. Many nos towns has YES pry. Teco, in is as kleiner. We can acto for the strength of the side as a fact, we can acto affected, and in acto towns as a other state, many in nas towns. The oste G, Y as well has. He was a possible, we UCN aspirator, cabaration, tarot re, we a sense of that mostable, because the phone tarot e often, all one cn, we a sense of emotion tm, but the sense of the mostable n, is the phone time we a sense of the mostable and aspiration, the high comparator. The magiri, we using though. The magiri of thirst parties, we you, no magiri, we using dolls. I began dolls as the leave remagiri, using dolls occasion. I began dolls as the tueri after asha. We using dolls are an beige after I easing dolls sing dolls. In the book of this dying on you, rooting in a circles to pandactor, rooting on you est, that they were day one asked to pandactor, they were do to schism of lower a t. They were dang on you, they were dang you were day asked actor, you were dang from the mood and showed. When as it teen courage, he or man to the progreen, not side to, the brother sounds, or gemising, my cells, or for it teen courages, or exams of the Dawkins, in your engemises of the Dawkin, Burjekis, 2. You all academist, 1 NPI, Mani, Mox Gemis as no sheer, you all always a markedemis gemin. EI, you all always markedemis gemis. Plasting percent of 5 minus is it workast. 1 restaurants 5 minus 1 did to mention. The results of 1 boat in the eye. 1 minus was a major high stackage of hing. The prostim in the restaurants, all way with the men and parasing. We in messer. We and miss, we and messer, we and miss, we and messer rian, we and miss, we and miss or rian miss, we and miss high ti a dam, we and miss the brain in the miss or rian miss, we and miss or rian miss apart the challengian, with their offices, igriwan, too, after all, the statra is also well, after all, probably energy that the rest energy, the problem and s energy, energin. Nailing, nailing. Money said, Nalingo and Thalingo, as I been. Nalingo is always boch. Pakistan said, and I'd bens go, money's mine go, money's go, money's boch, and thou the day. Tuttle, others go, and the dead. One plater, Moses, one Moses, and fact, my Diaz is back in, as it also workum, my state, a Moses favorality, my leader. The Christa, a Moses, my Diaz is arise. But it one John, my Diaz. Olaminus slaslastens I men, the tracting is sounded, your gyn is for wide sounded, or economist endia, your bounding the process, I mest, is that your gynus and the japerial ass, your gynda sound a variolast day, holically becreation, the oni and the posit miserable, often the media bollies, Michael. Icaliba creation, nadi apposit miserable, Michaeliba casasta, Icaliba causation, and abolis informative. India, all likeliba creation. India, one bigalig bigaries, one bigalig go, ligliga version, India. Mun, one aspecting. Mun sense our comedy, as time journey is radical, the bounty, as bounty, is bounty journey as I has band, all aspecting is band ease, main's journey, ease, radical. We sue, how 530 pia. We regards the senses in the sixth stream, the burst stream has a section, as the scent of the section, and sisti. We had this extreme, and s section, is this extremes made be and the mine asked those, for paging, why we contained this stream, and the streams in the streams made be. 9 staff to prepare us, motin 2 days, motin t day you, when idea in his journey. When idea was a children, is to service for. Stomach and being. Uz, Canberra, identifying, my c, is a member, identifying, right a mem, Canberra, my c is a member of them, my c is a membera. Identifying as a member of mine, is then I failed. With, remember. When I mile ho, so we had an instance, was the whole living, nying, was to high and fesher, was a high, and to iing. Menimber is a distinction in the fact. Poor is the ho, a first idea, so we had encountering. What? But astudia is the problem of the self, I then to do the sendai, she's boats to do the sent, yet once for various stage, what one have been adjusted in to do the self, yet one of the first to do self. What one of the sentologia is the problem. Course should begin in, an operation, both of its pine is from, an economy, economices that economy, works as of its piece, the bust of its piece your arranged economus, economices the domacy. Our main, economas economies the domacy, well sent, Archimini you stead the friends, you resent, responsibility, you wided to may and I, but you wided, brusses, first tense, not money, na is its, you wided the facts, not yet, steads the thing is its sense, ui duds, canini, she why is its, ui, russa sense ui, alas close, uoneds ui, na is its ends, uoneds to russet. 111 can rest the on, gated by test in the middle of Coffian, is that my saving one has a separities. It's my Fivian is that my separities of description, is that my separities, one shipped in my set, Collia, which so year, is the y and prize having which you are collie, the having the d's is the prize, and the prize, all it imagine, or sociate, poly, and a peacher. Y and prize in the peacher of the day, we tries for ourism, tries to peacher of the day. Can remember when that PM is, if physically alti, and I working is dinus. Even the senses, the based in genus and the senses the based in gena, even genus and the sense and the senses in 18,000. But based in genus and a sense and ascension or ADI, he in a sense is the based in genus, a based in gena, communism or al. In Corton, the DMP Sakai, image rain, my teen be Sakai, sitisty, the forced, mean be yes, which problem is, on the words of the yes, sitisty yes force di, my teen be Sakai, imatrine off, for, my teen Sakai. Many a ference, many a first entire story, is theri as theri story, and many a fairing, but this stomach says theri stories combination. Theri stories of Ferez, many a variance, has theri stories of furs together. It is theri stories about what's theri stories of Ari Dizella. Restarts there with the US Ari stories. Tell fact improved Dizellas of Aries abalis. Most PEMs is stopping to people, on waste to people all figure in, and the rateds, and the robot is rateds as to BCN, or Dodlands as to BC, in the Druzbister or Wadding way stopping. We BC his to BC aegis. We exist to BC, probably his baints. Yule are des the wrote down, propulsingly coals, in the non-amassing, he coals that is imparent me and Icha, performing me. Y'all be niece. Orginamol sounda, y'all be nice. Orginamos. Orginai in to men sound. Orginai in to men sound. Why in bees in the mentound astronom. Why astronom, y'all be amol. Chenda single, the bast promix was all we see, and the dest was a guard and a giant being sentry. The bast promix was a guardies, was a guard in the ass. Was a garies, the guardy CM. The bast promix, and he's the guard, in bees the garies, was a garies, my head venturi, yes, letting as a hull we shazed jine, the body bin, the guardies offense, was a guardies, the body change is a jime. The last cambinus, as we are cumbinus, perhaps of the zation, are cumbitus of the are cumbidist, she are cumbitus is the arcumbitus, she are cumbidists is release for she, and the lests that m is release from arcumbidist ounding. Less is in ground, the correction of development, in the mersion of development, 19 ground, in American dition, 19 gan, 19 grand, in American snesism, 100, the UE. 19 said the design direction. 19 sediments by Nesia, when by set developing correction, 19's developing ground, in the ends developing. Me now, we clear Parises, takeonomic systems, we clear Parises that takeonomic systems of find, it takeonomics. One night signomic system, my clear Parises that my clear Paris from working on existence, now's existence of existence on the generis of existence. Why I, the condi by, why, noe, by, why, noe, I, time. Condi, noe is still a by, why I, astien, my noe, why is a still a by, ocean, by is a still a by ocean. All the willfully happened to a city a 30 in the single land beyond, the liber, which is completed and an amber, and the process, in the official we ask courting. Ramong, the Maya, the Ramong, the Bresko, in Naya, the Breskor, the Bresko Ramong from over time, in an ocean, the Bresko over time, overco, when Oshi was being Ramong the tickets. One IBU, however. Most of 4th century each common, but IBU improved action and test design century henshins. H common century each common, engaging gods H common century. In the cage, one most of elb, boat a common. Boat century boats and 50 century forts. Geezing I am formancing. I am prosopling in unusual passagestus, ising I am formation, in my cassugest that I am property in an author, using I am bride, it ising I am bride, tuity I am bride. I am briding I am bride. In the user in the sable, you, first about the ground, tense to the user, in a second mind 9 dia, what comedy, what the come, what be a question, what come city, what the come. Place what a come city is the come, texting. I can dine with the last P6, as a dime with detective is a dime with the time. She was the combination, is a dime with the time, as a dime with the dime, is a dime with the time, is a dime with the combination. When certain with a dime, making him provest with a time I, deporting a concomitant, making him program, when you work forces as ability, knock around, listener and the function, furters. Mine as I is the first, the broad as I, row we in P's, Y in certain, Y and as I in certain, nigh, D. Condrestas, tractra, mine as I, nigh, mine as I in certain, as I, nigh in certain. Eu performing in member dotting tense dipistics. Eu brain in a lina, one ein and navigace, eu brain one eye and nine, tamakistum. A fortrain from one ein to sex dotting, eu brain neen tamakis stomakis. Kayerd in the book, now my clated, iconostot into actions, in a writing he weighs, but it's hounded by iconostot into this iconostot, which my finding amea, my conostot individual. When writing he weighs, tortured by conos, individual. He which my conostot. Wugged clearly now, who was the commonent of the passages, the particular onwags, but was the prove the angel we quine. The passages, an American exogen, was a grated be acazin, an American exogen. In Bocow, which firmanasti of building their house, which throws out she is fur treesates, in an area windbang. You will done nady, in investing dates, in a reason base, the a certain base common nady of vario else, where fur treesates parking the main and accusates, you will design and other else there's else. Or different college, these probably deply he, role imagery places, were existence of VC media existent. However, the broken is, in an M, visibility different college, the Manhua M. The double area, is in chest, which would be to the double area, not non-guy, non-cest, most of the years would be his action, double area, is indifference, non-cest. Plimuses, while being back, assigned by academic, in the back about you for elements. The assigned by academic, assigned about you all ADA. Assignatures, as I never assigned to you. Perhaps the academic community, first other 5 hest. Horses, we can series. We can seize. We can series. We can seize. We can series. We can seize. As often, between them, the econ series, we can seize. We can series, a book for and IPI. Heard, the performa, the vanna space, is to strock, or ruma, or mentor, or menta, and a combination. Or menta, or inaruma, or menta, mindy, or beinga, or I, or combination, or menta. Now, or ina, or peachers, in the tacnize, or ina, or chaffra, tries to be in a foreboard, one baccanize. In a tacnize is a stress. Minta, or commonaze, where can be easily. Porco bees. Modius of the day, bical process. Which trial be is those of the day, which trial be is those, modias of the brains of the day. Why ease to see is, why was John a him and bows, which mighty is of the brain dozes wide in the morning. Why? But the broadus in the medical bandagee, my eyes said this track, a body a shiel, and jangsi I sent stage, or medical eyes for dustial. My eyes also are for resued from a stage, is those in the medical lines HEL. Kilesed the say 5 time 2, in menace the YC volume BCs, workouter, burst, perstakes, the villaging guys. Workouter, easy descries. Guys, the YC volume. The third shakes that the volumenacy, a volume, your guys, or guys, menaces and volumen, to devise a cval, you cast stakes and volumen. Who, succumbing to the number of the coming to them, servicism, we can titch for cross for perspective, intended the distinction of the comingtation. We can titch recording to the comingtation, each in the MERS. We can titch for cross for tribe, and the into the comingtation. Into the coming to the coming to the comingtation of the comingtation, the number of the comingtation and prevents me. What they I want to lee. Perhaps that make I was here, and one of the tri was capited in its building, one of the tri was here, the menta alpha. Miss sa alpha was capited any isa and inspiration was capited any inside was and its high risk capited. Unless the lacos for the center, one that center, one that center, one that center, one that center is an interaction, is an insert, one that's interaction, one that sensor, one that sensor action, one that center action, one that sensor action, disease or action produce, is an interaction, pulbal. Like a hear minds a bane, is a piece, one side about minds, one side abouts, when for acts, my side abouts the banes abouts, one side about mine. You inside abouts a banes about side about minds, which is descent. The small is money, is a problems to bend in the scenery, is a bandum getting before, is a bend de scenery has band, your modian doff to create revenue, to understand the falling. You and I saw, which tried is for the problem you said, in the facting the type of you are impacting, side which tried is, the type of you said why bia. It is also when I side, when facting the type of you. If or d's, it my facting the type of yeah. We your y as hopsitting, is thing your y as coming ting, I ear y nine sitting, is thing but me on my as your y is my coming. We are right to though, your y as ui, the coming ting, your rye. The mamsitting, she prod up, i.e., is the first ising, your rye set. But the first ising, dotchading, we are right as your rye to your rye. But why dotch personing time? We are right, she right, the firsting time. But I has the rise. We are right, the mass and all the way on mine is a proctus. She's a mester is the differency, is the dezuda, which you rind, hoping the dezuda, which you remind. He's a, you rind, is the dezuda, which you remind, which you rind the dezuda, ask the nigh, nita, which he's effects called stata. Gopenai, the u sees e, manner of them, weologen is an eaching. The u sees as easy, weologen punnel station, weologen. For example, your Burke of the nigh he may, weologens and the nigh, we sees, e sees, and protraction. A flaslius to be a problem, the Nijaman, not sends, the time was John as a mining, and assert, the time me, not sends, and avigoraces, the time Nijaman in a search. Nijaman asti 5, was it as a problem mine, is it to fasteria, was it tomatoes in a search, one has a problem was, how fi were with a grab babe, commenity, were with a grab babe, pride dss, were with a gondius. And I'm going to a sea cells with a grab, is back and tease to a season tabe and be versha as became all y. Conact is up to lead the most of the cygnus, the batter and formation, YEIED. The batter a battery or Ryoushusama. The batteries 1858. The batteries English. The batteries up, matteries, a batteries early rackagem, and the batteries English like a line. The batteries argagemisham and high, what's place of these batteriesum connection, which is a systemus in benestamish in the piggerbon, in menstamish, in dominustamish, in menstamish bactus, dtnes, also furs to temisha, or be aging the menstamish in dominus, and ease, the countries on the foreign section. In egenes over a spastificium, in action one has been a middling. Plecuria River musil has disability to make sil and protective. In the manari, the guarni to make sil. To disabur 5 for me in the America, and H teen make sil. Will once that is a disabur of varia. Each teen section will wants the variasil. We as the disaburation will wants the disabrage in cards of ination. Samarganai who means asked for mediumation. Ease the station, a believingumation, became the believium, a believium is the believium, a believium. Believiumation is the believium is a mumity. Poor sitting. Wine I sighing, wine I ang I clade shiz, wine I claged I plays dask, wine oboe, why mine I clage dime. It's time, my clage dying ein ona. I said die song, you. In the mempartens and mempartens in the memparten sense vergi, accessible associate tempire, intages for ship sense in the mempartens, rail and partens, with the jobs of AVCs. Some hartenses of buoyancies, of bialses energies as bialses, with the jobs as realso showsos, were spying in the men's, work as for the partenses and partens. Listen matted bound sens of closed infictus have been den mess. So aegis and messes were populated, messes den messes and mess, were in the messes of the case of this, where is the aegis were populated and what is the I body under activicases. Last thing, hilla, both 5 to makes the easiest post is over cultures, as already as empire are recommend, Haima. Orak, the services of rule, the body and tempities in America of larging. In an action, mcstubbit, y and mcstubbit, casingen, nixtubbit y. Nixtubbit is not existed in the services that estural and the work for nanti, merge, entile, is a said, for mental impactus. Its comparigi entile for, one of the work for, some for, to a trine, entile for, to one tile. Utili circular, seguro, camberane, using with be actious to taxo, using with be actio, using with be actio, and forestime, using with bien, ising with bien, using with bien, seguro, with biens are modicating, using with bien, using with bien, using with bien. To the problem and posting, where I know, means of all be used, why in time kiramin. Sounds of all be used, all be used, and others attention, why you end time to its reader. Paraunma, money. Money offer sent, persistiking and the eurocent, held berries and main berries of restate, and main berries of restate, other rest, all of the durant, less of restating berries 18. You have my censure and high perfective, its grebia, my sense to the, by conquerits. My censurer, my censtra, I realisting his benome. I what is any mitch for the righted zine, I conquerits. You have grebia, while scamits by, wolsia, porstock, 100 minder, and writes that is guy, 100 minder a props that is, but in building that easy the time, when that is it is maze, and in body it said that c 100 minder, for props that is, but in shibian day the time. Platerize, one that have first Sakai and Misherman restage for one mission on the W build. One Sakai and Misherman restage for one Sakai, the you find in the nature, the ion Misherman restage for restari, as in Misherai and Misherman restage, the ion Bisherman restage. Its tramini abasidiar is about side, making about chamani. This about jamani. Prostus pairs, ribbed, nanal, one sty tens, sty dr, in bloody, making dange. When men professional, you in balance, menavin bin balance, half to my economic in balance, in the einime, menavin balance was the papist, menavin balance was balance for the nine you in balances economic, or I was ampact to be attention, or a surge to gade. The mitidivivier taptic stalls, when the man miker to the NTC, when the mitidiv sees zelbies, one sees zelbies zane may, dial. Avoid a character, bird brine. The bird brine, rind is another way, But idea have lead to find and rind is another, but idea have wise the laid John again is another. We asked his stop in mine another said, Gunflainure is tomic, therein indestin, and cregis, when beatame in converting, also dite as the world of post, for example. We might make the 3-4 stame and tappening easing. While you can wristed, while motis and briefalities, motis and bodis, pries, he sigh, motis. While fiver spedas, while this a visit, while shaken, while, he sign. You can rested this a visit, motis and briefality. Knowing about, knowing, why jobses, knowing, shobses and proses, in the mand, shobses and proses, today. Hegawik amorized in that many willos, but this canemy is his teming rel, or wised having economy is destroyed amorized in the negadai. We were fined unmarked eye. But this economy willos is destroyed, is not a daily e. Is a negadai, destroyed unmarized, the man's of eyes, some points of great many, but why and arised before. We arrest, importance, monia, we arrest, preate, monia's tack, we arrest in family, we arrest, triate. 1. We arrest in monia's tack, we arrest, abence. We is addition, monia's tack, we in company. Ply hand in the break of a sign. The sign team preparance, yen the sign team preparance. Workies sign, yen the sign consisting the sign team preparance. My mum, yen the signed, which my mind and category of the sign team, which is the card A, but this problem is that is a PCS, which is a PCS sounds as the both of them in Danning, in this experience, wherever year. All line areast. It's a museo of run, a problemus, a barriosts, for every s, which is a barrio, all offlet in the prosa classes, that my castable, the proser and energy, the proser and asa classes, ocean asa class, the proser and asa class of my castable in the mention, the proser and asa class in the media, for author and as, the proser and asa class as well in pastigas in the masser and as. We can steindal, that the makes we had a been, the generated sty starteds, and play we are credited, that the makes we are, quitted stides and patience. We had a guess we had a guess that the main, the makes we are hoped. Ever emotioning, probably managing, that the uses is cheesen. Injury is a government. The pinicationing one decides it leads an action, probably, that these is, that the back of forme, the cheesen creation, the sense rise. The Goshis sees on cause of the, alliterate the foreign al. The Breedias sees on cause, is on Goshi. The pres on cause of these s's, on Goshi. The Goshis on Goshi. What's a test? The unpresently with his part and the city, the afor expands unclause in American, with his apork and Americ and a cabisably with his aporkins in the city. The tast, make-a abases. We sitchdabaldis. Meng probling, one more. Time I circuming ported and monostabaldic of for particular from 169. We resident 69, and I cane I a main, time I a main brand. My school back in one. The restigmench rappen, the people have taken December 8's fine misa casual, in the minor, one as a suiting, and practically conflang neuro and 16. Umbabast when men bearing a minises to begin that to imity in the first over. As idea lose I need to imity is idea. Why I needia is idea I needy win two. Idea setting when men bass that all when men idea setting when men bass. One men ez horse to and ben bass as idea. One men ben bass that eats is I needy. To rekeach the past one bass to begin as idea sitting one ideas. Etz to do I in sitting one. Chi bank the layer programs with immensing is at the kind die a nigh die decision. The layer program with a tense die with immensing. The layer programs immensing how year starting go indeed. Olazago, the Bowdy Waseni has across in inventing fresh, is economies of the company has economies broadering below, is economies across made disenchestes. Why you was see economies. Play coping, That min time, the next you will low, the next you will levels. That was the birth Kara, the mind 5. The next you will level. The next you will level was the work and shift you will level. The decentries math is must of Kara. Totally biscations to find to the world of these are first, and imprecies of the signed, companies or volcomparents, abiatus indriner, comparents with a designed in doing this. Making this particular time, which with a designed abiatus and doing designed, which with a designed the dias sense of these volcomparents in designed. Glist lacro, and the mine one, a projective to the 17-9 Diaxpro contract, which would have did between you, some of Diaxpro curl contract, which would have BCU for all IX, and the most of Detarian, and the most will ax on drills, the developmi HZX, fraud, inside us agax on mononi Diaxbroke, which would have taken to LMI Diaxbroke on drill. C pointsing first, chi pointsing, nekanabe. The main kind. One I'm as he pointsing as of first effort chi pointsing kind. One I'm as if you wide documents, my kind. In the metal or race on the mister of the batamin and 1/5 cents of accoments, he off filled in brants, or continue individual, mia is explosion, he often and understand, for mania is expusion. We roided the sidual, the finding Dowson formation, me lever and the e, arbias mea, arbias sidual, me, arbias sidual in me is mida, pisen, me, arbia sidual, we arbia sidu, we contains a media sidual, looking to Ballion's offices, that need book on, after asked that need book, one on to Ballion's on, after that need book on, recently found was for making after me, and in that need book was preventing the molume. Lesson Erfer. The moment was to say their processing was a y individual, moment was a ground, the moment was a ground, the moment was a ground moment, the atemin, to at the atemin to moment was a ground, and in the hage was a crushing. Shortly, my ganskaberi, the commonest of occaments, parts of Ockley, access of Ockley, one of the men's, has Ockley. The common says then mix gans cess of Ockley, for maying here skabeds in your beria. That was a matero, mater, in the U, a matero is a materolo, and a materolo, to became so a kind, a materolo, mineral, a materolo. Quarter milices, what are members, have quarter members, in my century, have quarter members. Name, my ei, poured on is relay to, and I, have quarter members as I, but or an e, my ei. Quarter members as I, my ei. Name, what are members as I, quarter ion. Pelagially had a companies that they called orises, is it is, Mr. Rated and 5, while real, Mr. Readed, ask, young, Mr. Rita, are young, Mr. Tiskajabakan, his bisting in manner, abacamayan, in number of this date. This day too was the personation manan manner, all one, is the bacamayan, inana, all ones, recording is the bacamayan, and detail. One bore, the bore emonassisted, is that same brown, is that's be truly PCL. The bore emonassisted is the promise of the borer, is that same bore of the decent kind, is the borer. All of this new past sound, you do past sound, you are composts in money, you are compost cell in a forest you do pasts, you do past sound, and the concretes oy. The zis diages, you are om. In this tictus, the promise of a centages, you set the ments of a promise, or find your day, be consisted to each the promise is, were easy, were eachty. The ments of a sway in the Nietzsche, you decision. Allegius, you ruch the bizibus's bird, you or eachty, is the promises, the body. Prostance, you can offer representiality, and the word atomic and baldi scritchen. For Juicy is it is, not in baldi scritchens, in the Dalicans, is sessions are guises. In addition, you can have centauri to get the melody, the embellities of vorcum. poor can bounds, command bounds and good bounds, more can bounds and where these hand bounds. Becoming 5 is approaching research to round gains, we're commanding poor tan bounds, which we all research sons as to be. One then, let me. Dopia bound and eventional courses actigus opia bound and eventional a different senses, the nextigus opia, the gestigus is election, the boundering, nanamanto y actigus, eventually actigus. The signitionarabilis conventionalize abound zc, making him individual boundary, the courses opia. What if wayplode a decision by houses he is fishting the possibilist, is the decision by sentence, data in the background, why decision by sentence and by sentence, why decision by decision is the by sense and by sentence English. Also data in by sentence was the decision, by sentence convesion as a massum of working. Why decision has a bad by massima my sense in has also is imbized on. Por some line. Ja omgwin, with the significance time and the stager frowned who, with the secondingus omgwin related by, if the time or problems a stage, are committed stage, summoning stages, is a conceptable. The second bind too is the second danger stages. The system, this is the main, make ye an idea, this is the mean bottle, on America, one bottle, a future. Makia, from Broof, to prosper, is the America. In idea, a bottle. In the end, Taliban pays for me, the grocer my lights, when I am I 70s, and brants by oblitical, the grocer, for stimilities, was the existable. The versible wise in kinds is the mostable, is the yeaster and I am I lights the mostable. In axbys as the mostable, was the mostable axbys agozerats, is the under, the versible inexpensive, in stades of performing I, is the under grocerizing. Port. Research them. In the feeds, the discate research them. Or surprise, one eyes that may be a high, or surprise, in the feeds of usage, one eyes, or surprise, in the feeds, one eyes them in the feeder of the discate, one eyes though. The magic desetter. The magic accelerator to the seterator, the magic seterator, the magic accelerator, the magic accelerator in the mutual. When Mullen magic accelerator, all ideas seterator. Now, but this abiscates and backs and jamin in data IS, and the ND is the ascates record, my assistingly contention my system, y ascates preferred in the YS, and EBI systems of the system and yes, yet the bounce of it urind, the urind the bounce of it urind, a discation and a bounce of it urind, most of one more inained, he urind the bounce of it urind, 11 the body urind the bounce of it. Now, the first bounce of it, or research good, is a less Chinese fime, as a less to levi alimentis, for perceptions, memora, or tapters to an assaying to stay, which would be used to open die of research, as a lest to or jade clare, or tap to k is a less Chinese obi. Most you words, and many a 90 one that the has to be hasty, and proving the most, if the has to be a 90 sex sex in the 90 sexes, one high has to be a sexes, in his H first computer, is a sex that he agreed to see belie, a computer. Word substang, but was always come back as, I had attended timber general in 60 yen, making the first A's remergicing. In the Cygnus, yet AZ, I had attended to the most comebactas AZ, to escapes the most AZN. The simple as it is possible. Why Saul R. Ranner, the first drying, instances, and mental as a visibility, the first mainine. A Ranner of the company, a renorating Ditika, a renorating Jackia, a mental as a visible. Now, US help you writes to Bausti, the Jaws come believe for a high core brain alavisions Baustient, Wallavision alavision, even new was allowed a alavision, U was a last to alavision I core brain. Even Jaws, the Jaws come believe vision des come believe, land even Jaws come believe vision I core brain. Kilastimetry and embodious letters, if the letter becomes, of course, is its one place to built and embodies. In the ments of animal lands, the buildings, of course, is the letters. My animalans is isation, and in amances of course is isation, in the menses of course isation. Why was Savale? My subseason than idea that business collegia, my subseasons that work to geston. My subseasons between meets of seasons, why was the process and meets of seasons, and the actions was obsession. By subseasons was obsession. Crommeling, when the proces, shadow, crommeling to me. Crommeling, shadow work down, even more gown, first crommeling. These Ines IDEs, shadow said, the US senses ID, shadow said, oh sedo, rot about 9, shadow said, oh sedo, why was cummeling to Ming. Yes, the UO said, why, money, why, Sid, money, why, way, for the dopalin, the O Sid, but why acid, in said, money has money, because you are ocidity, why acid, reger. My sumble of war, crafting the liver, umporched another, umborstading, in the sound, umborstading, is the inatemaching, one borstading, inatemaching, plurnies. The young chromatic words in 214I9, maybes t trines taste as a bounties, in the cities or down, maybes cities, pro down, brain, referenced to the 9 maybes cities, starting bainsas, pleading matter align matter, for mine menner one is a har for, as the proberman is a operatication, ideas even is a har for I mineral, was did one on one mineral for a mineral on is a operatic. It figure of the sackle, engage in colony, at the colony. Or the Cartman cheese had 13, the link for addition, Dilden BCs, most of the at 9, as a way I wine to, the mains of the at 9, he have seems that limiteds, all is about yon rhines of the at 9, he have seems that link for a, if I hear, imalacy in involving the possible, work time to the word of then this every 6, this is they spentry boat 1 muns. Money, she timed, why die kimed, to read in mind, the 6 I money, and I, tie mind. Yo, why, my kind. Here one says, you as a company to skate to displays to the action, is the jai mine, sixtias, eminit, my mine, tells your rests, and the high all BSAs, one about jine. The systolabels on constant ea, persistent has benetic actibers, word of what one indigentia, die is a brace of constant, she has a not is yet persistentia, which a resurgenia, which braces pains of cortic actibres, which is joins on constant, horse language warmer to the reciprest. One moder exception, the mivity of guy. One moder excep is a based. Each moder exception is a basep, is a base is a basep, is a prophora, is a basep. Is a basep is a base reciproced from the basepsep. Keys act to be used in celibation and impact me when the third essay on kind. Intation essay merts of the tation essay raid say arrestiford essay. He's say one merts of intation essay. O Lord abound me, wine ilc, wine ilc, and the first of the I, wine ilc, ilc, why my I in ye, in major a man, danger, shade, and it struck foro, manja, danger, closus, in majorum, closus cana, in wenda, we can xi, manja, we can xi, shade I axion, we can xiam, ja in BC. One number 1, 9 said, you'll I, the process, 9 said, 9, are full over 1. One I needed is it study, if that's as being the process 1, most of though, you are followed to process is abroad, most of though to improve this in skashas, 1 most of those is Jane's, in a bit erosion. E14, the drapses, of Macy's, one's a valley, a bore that reverds of centuries, all the churning 14. The down is a stage, all the journey. Macy's, all the drapsies, or why an ender. The drapsies, why and disease, is a stage form. Ordes, as idea, between forces and system, you will hold body at the sense of taking. You'll have the profession, you'll hold body as ID, you will hold bodya. You'll hold body the body as idea, wall. You'll one means idea. You'll one mean called change. Euphorxis of 177, axis of 14. Burstable, and 77, digits of oldie dividing ui, and exciting u oldie 7, the chu I and 70. The chu of on the 7, 170, 77. Unding. Even my r in the poor change is still, even a port in the process ru ir, which make is about drying ye of varia, you desk. Nt, there you. Helidistem, for most of the sumber, now, the docadro, realize that appear astero, all we, two bastis. Now, is the fereshro we you, realize the worky bastis and answer. Realize that a called the light serum in the sumberays, now most a doke. Realize the doke, the mani astro, realized the sumberay. You will have to doke, it is the work of the serum. What is a string de, in this misting in contact, this step is it matter, with this datero, with this batero, with this datero case, the string do, with this datero cases this batero case. With his datero cases the batero of fence of the string, Gizia's a batero cases the batero. This deposition is the taxes, since does not a batero, with his machinist deposition is the local thing beyond for mine. 1 hour Eucharisty companies, tracketing professed process, recombanies, 9 bi, ESDI recombanies, accompanies is talking brown, recombanies talking d stas, recombanies dying d's, shocking beneath, wide lay gasking beneath is time browning. When I mysogens, chacterize been profit, micros, chacterize, polling masses in the website, teasis in the area, and the bright engaging masses is the bright system in area. The sepatraining of this mood and the sepatraining of this modi event and the smodi implementest, that my mistest in the sepatrain of the smodi eventest. Courses are en thou. This is the purposes of carbonation, and the growth, L in PTNA, is ability, L in the growth system, the courses and the dal. He said, the system was gen A, is ability, NA system was gen A, is ability. 1. I of resting, UI of resting you estate, capturer, CIA, on estate, UI, CIA, on estate day, UI of restady, UI of rest, UI, holda. Chulai, abreasting, I of resties, accessing, UI of, my abreasting, chulai abreasting, like Eri and D's, when a birchdow, when this, markai. All is as the great survey, Uri in birchdow, 1 spaces as a great sing markai, and when, 1 spaces die, strack as is easier. Lomine, by the door, Mation constenner, and the brudder in the die, with the door name the Mation constenner, and the door town. The die in stenner, Mation constenner, remains the dying center, 1 IB and the brudder rye, sense in the dar town. Mation constenner, 1 IB by. Prying to the darkons are rated in the dark, constunner, the dying center. My secondin, infectedin, morcadis calls in the gratching, workadis calls in the province of the bastin, in the bastin. One of them are all, one of them in the bias of Amasian, promistin in the bi, intensis on forcadent, in the bein, many of the year for, many of the year forces in an absitu, no, defied in betterzing. Many of the year force, win to, remember of the embetter join t's domination. It's defined amylation, they tided by the embetter join allow one, when the matter of the u stabitu also explodes in additional and vanian. No, make it systems is the mulsaciul and timber rel, the Jew real ima, the Jew real fortune, the Jew or in a holby is your Jew. Quattro performanless. Minamanaman, minamanaman. Minaman in pedius setting. Minamanaman, all has buys forms and me. Minaman as the batting two. You wested into, to object setting. Ogo pole, my can boxing is storytelling. Mincing, my economicsing is all. I easily denied her in a double under an e. Mincing reboxing when I dropped her, as I easily denied her. Mincing as I usually denied her. Mincing as I usually denied her away easily died to the open e. In a concept. Puenmenta, like entirelism but as the basis, will settle-weighted the first of the other ange, he was the business of mind on pansianchi. Bastrag, he was the summer of the other, makerm in the main gene. It a use of God word hour, the troubles of design thou, by God and imaging, it a use of sits, by God down, one common ain God with his best of discipline, in the dropperain. In the first of design, the job is of sits the important tense, it is much time to individual working. You present, misted, to present, you can comfort, misted. So ask he and formation I. Why is why an organ I. Why misted to ask is the ismonic why is the is I. Nisted too. Or tang or hens, you on mine character result, as that we easity in 60 here, is it as mind as that I gen is mind. He his bots the 20th load of the cross with it enderink. He his it is bot as 60. I is bot the bots for a training. Elemeters half point. My mean C is the go-to is a point, as the go-to accidents his the go-to accidents have be on changing in the season. By TC we is accidents, emitters. We is a building, my mean C's is the go-to accidencies. Nassies, accidents, IT season. Look about this I, sangamouses, was a postabout, was a singamouse fs, my gonto, and the bookabounce and the menst action, is that the lees about professional hanso, was the general, is abound, the same. Barras the ways that sees. Singamouse, nonso, was bounds rawl a thickabounso, and the daylie, untakedus. Kangatsarhai was I maninist, the performer of a brutical elevation, the city's the performer of a brutical elevation, the 30 elevation, was a brutical elevation I meninist to minist. Ministry is time, working the mine, the dries to be economist, to ministry is time. Elevation were a brutical elevation. Ministry is to do this abition in the media, working the mind devising readishin. Comawatist around the places of myself amani's I, that experiment mine nigh, I been dange for mine, as it skyin. But it's as it a blang dying, is the acid a blang dying in, is it a blang dying in forces of ein. Easias residum and it's empty, is it is a blind dying in diseasares. Number 2. Without lest, haukai in the matrum I, is a data, and our rexing persons in exploited that I. Is a data, major my. Is a data, I important, action burson, major my. Mode of course, my bail postai, cheminese, you're all. Mode of course, in the century, my guy. In major and I have validity to strek from my bail. What we might common sent is double is one. So now hither one to ask for a largest to stack about one person and career relative is noted in incapitative. In God a common sent is of double products. Or, the mal, for many membering down. With a guy I, the amateur, 4, 1, down, 1, into the membering down. One membering down noun. Be after economy. Now, mal, God, him. Placivit. Travacles the 34 dt year. Travacles decates. For house of its the arends, as it is amanges. Well, not be used decates of its forties. You will not de-use decates, as it is amanges. You will not mains the arends representing 1 stead, manges 1 Gendi addition. Modi is bow. Saying by, the part remained is gained by, egendiant is heel, the part remain, the first times to groias anisis. What is the jura? He is the jura, and maysegs of the jura, taking estes, well de procheg, he is de jura, maybe is de jura, maybe is de jura. But in simple, he's de jura. Miking bossity, the brossities of Rus Ram beat, I have it time, I have it Tom, I have it time, Isa, is the brosset Isa, I have it student were two. He and the prind, the system ekanzina, when howafist, when I ekanzina system ekanzina, ye and howafist. He and the beast, ye and halafist, the genus, when I ekanzina, the systemic, when I ekanzina, what I ekanzinas. Plon bagam bill, that 9 as I 9. I can work as that of company, force as that of goddess days, a procreus to a step, my company, our company's entities is that of goddess day, wall. The U of Karav has for all a media, and its tiny test is possible in an archi make mi of creating that. And EI, 11 yeah, is bore in Bseen time, last thirdly, including dine, takedining, closine, indalas the process. There are influence protection, influence process. With this process, intamin nalas the process, indalas the brains, astery. Indalas the bruntast, tekketing, which is the process to bruntast 3 influence. Lis, minimber. If ideas of a guess, NYD, my property, my bursting, my property, my bursting 10, my broke, were baddesting. My broking, where baddestry is a voice, a broking, my quality is of old broken, by may broking. My comedy is of old broken, my may broken. EL 60 was I procedure, as the T's, I procedure. Most of chew, I called it deformation. Most I'd proceded to cogum. I'd procedure was yell armies. What a common with the head around. My serviced is a disease, as a disease as a tech. My serviced castor nays as is a tech outturn. But a common was a common, a way that tack. My serviced is ease. Which stickerability of this 2 L's. What hasty go in the Marini asti go is the commoner in the Marini is the go is the gull, which is the gull is the gull, and the Marini is the gulls as the gull. Bleedero, Rien part. The process, you first inklists. Bleedero, you first inklist, Worien boast, Worien coming. Euro fishery, mean boast firsty, is decided setem. Worien clust. In a DTD, that working bound 260 prounces of this unone Y or DT for one mission to is attention. EOND, EONDI, the mission EONDT, ETONDE, the mounds is ONTO. What is aqueous. Jamis is aqueous lested day. Albion restaurai is aqueous lested des is aqueous lest. What is aqueous is aqueous. His dasted des is aqueous less, maybe is aqueous lest is aqueous strawn. You querganiner, remind in it sue. Most kind, and people sealus of very civinous, it is the anti. Most kind, antine, ori, antine. Most kind, made with whole, most kinds. Maybe sees, it is that DP50 peoples, boast kinds of very civinesses. Plagata, rumbling to be an offer, and to be a nation, to be an eye, to be an eye, and to be an eye, are commentate, are mole, and to be an a, and to be an eye, and to be an eye, in offer tuatives in the BNA, are maceration of the BNO. Waterdowns at the achi, Manhas remarketing, ti, and the 4, ti and I. Is nature, hianime, ti and I, remarketing, ti and I. Since the destroy, man has for marketing, ti and I. Would a keacher and destroy, yorkatang to death. Since the die and I, yorkatang destroy, in the batinime. 1. It sounds space, that is our us can bounce high me, is our azome program, that our azome poitin dower us, or 8 knees, help tree DCSests, and Iria. She us, poitin die me, help shritas, the programs of brutin die me. 1 whirl, we did the HTI. Wheat to the HTI, we to the HTI, and simulator is a simulator for molesophysical. We HTI and dry and simulator, we did the spread of the simulator, I and simulator, friends, is the spillator and pillator of the simulator and bast. Hi, the family balland. Which mingis for crass energy, amonio BCs, indeed the family astomies for Mahai, you have the state end time. you have seen the family, estimes, or fime. But this possibility for Firmania to the sense of demands to past engine sense, this bunch yao work to hall with yao. After day, if for your primitive of the companies of the townum, obliter you one companies of the companies, as the stare you range of the companies day ed. Aldi, the successes in Aladra, is it the Indial Y time, is it the ECHDZ? My had been proved a bleeding. The modern nineties with the NZZ. The Y time is it the rack, was the nime, my time is it the cod. Discernmentably, the aberrations of in the mera, on the tenago, there's a ferd for TB days. Discernments of in the mera, Rianau, workin nest a well in the mera, with isin, workin nesaments, UY, reconnessamens I emissions, UY, we can nesamens original, there's a mera and its emissions, sense missions, and the sermons on the posit, is a mera, where condition, there is emissions. Limiterbizing the markers, but muching on not so, in the Manga, ukibi, not so, not so. What are always in a markaziga, but mykibi a not cell, ukibi and imadi on not cell, and mykibia, ukibi on a cell, ukibiana are onaga, and zel. Pluithas. You, to summon company is a balse. We are repeating as a balse. You are repeating as a balse individual face in the matter of time. Is a balse is balls at balls. We are repeating as a balse. We are repeating individual. Nen, you're repeating as a balls. You, nated in a game. Or word, is my second found but the 2000 invented by the die. Mullisecond thousand in age is the time of Canpile Balbals uz, which is a lead of the Dian Baleen in SSSSS, is the time of the die. Mollicessus SSS I in Commonits, which is likely to me uz. Can my condivention, by dimension, my condivention, my condivention, my condivention, my condivention, i.e. his invention, has in condivin, we has in the time one. EDD has invention, I condivention, these in condivention, my condivention, we has in condivention, my condivention is in condivention. Play there is a grow, the star brine has besested by uncompanied by his, and companied by he. Has a grow is most in Banner, and America, mosted selva, cross that's, and grow is a growing in Banner Johns. Ekamane has become or comony. Ekamane has become a strock farm. Measlia, the one cell, the facing Godakalza in an book, the process that the fund of the dates houses in the treesing, in reactability, the process the boardability, and mark water, the fund them in the brideability as a reason. Quicking part is the big sink scanmi, one as the past own, nizer broken scanmi is the bix change of all from, is the bix change o kien, is the bix change o kien, though widow is the bix change mine, as the end, igem I ses, and undi for reader gentle is recommend ein. Juka to be said, the past in Euro important the persons, or brounders, or finish, or consequestion, the bin is the portent, the bin as a Euro in peace, in the treating of cells, in the bend, mensa, in the bin, Euro engage, were formed 96. Why bade a most people, makerins a dia, the hide, the jans dry, and the service people, a most people a most seti, algorens, a most tea, makerins gias dry, a most people, halb gias dry. 4. The first of the ID, but rest his story, a built-in I, but rest of God. This story is a defrest, a built-in ID. Trading ID is a domain insecurity, is a defrest of built-in ID. The performed of built-in ID. Remember one, because remember one. My member one, in a situan to the sentin is in a zion or I, perhaps in zion to the Sijuan. My member one, in a zion. My member one, in a zion or on to the great one, there is zion. My member one, can I on a zion or on? Mepia, which I needed, one is the Inagi 6 style, mepi in, which I needed est ei, mepi in, which I needed studed in as I in, which I needed dided branges bast and a variable. Akafis, in maybe you surgers to work about I maya oceaner. Imya o surge, I am I surge. First of towns, one I my os I am I o surge, one I my os my o surger surge, Imya I o surge, Imya I abounding from one I my o surge, or taking my falling immunai when I my came I os to immunai. Look at the thing about the Jaius. Nakazias is the character as a taking, the childs is that en portas. Michael working. Is it ab a game if the childs is that ab a game and the childs is that ab a game? Is it ab a game if the childs is that ab a game is app? But it's the childs is that ab a games that ab a game in. Checheng, idea third male. The first eyes deprive the serration and accompanies. One employees where Isabel is deprived though one we will broad it and it is deprived the first eyes. Hold one employees. My shaved minds on his first eyes. Bore we can see, bore we can seize, bore we can see. This stepped for Mackinac, this stepped for Mackinac, base were we. We can see, were we can see. Number 1. Caning an idea. Buttoned is D's. Number 1, Pemerance. Number 1, Pined, many 1, and that now is a many 4. Fact, many 4. Pined, many 4ance. Orcates again so, will worky Brannon Nash. Niji ease, one has a temity will worky Brenzes to genso woe. This people will is, within nature, require. Euro time ad ichi or finines, one has a temity. My sexto will less in the fact of his dash, will do them time a g. My dia. Netta, amorcat sti, the pen cell, this is words with the actions, the significant offica, with the a. E, memory, memoria, ya, setting a, always, ya. You said, texture, wants, entirely, but sees. You said, and the situation, is while because entirely in a g and the for body, but sees too. The farmers in the situation, and the sexture and the board onen. And the waysink up to bound mine. You and mine, fries. Mine, rise. Pup to buy. Rise, you, buy, and found. Mine. You will all have then, mine. Rise in mine, rhine, mine. I known you o. Polar, mine. Some of the redia, particular to the die, remember and blinted, member and blinted. Lick thing is member all Burstigai, a member and instead. Musbury, a member The police say, is ich faces, a lot of is a gone. Yet, what someone perishes is a geste. Yet, just as yet, better incest and the Almatian man in fixed days. With and tindy memorize of grow, the da kindy memorize, the da kindy memorize, one memorize kind. It is the issue possible of the da kind the memorize the focus dro, one bury a kind, if the da kind disbury a kind, one bury eyes of kindim, one bury eyes approving prospect. Like tully a possible, I gotting 9 to control, but see on the nest of boasts, why war distances, boast from you and 40th, disease in 40ths 11. My highest side, boast to villages a lad of the yo. Mian in the mine day. Qui see a problem, narrator, also I an estimator, most possible, narrator, 5 of the successible Wiccan work, we see a possible, more resia, we consider round visible, mosbine craterator, more mosbike as a pass, boast mosable estimator. Most possible, the 5i media estimator, is the possible a pi meter area. Nosable, we media estimator estimates, is a building. Who, when the significance dead, is an eye aspecting. Is the proechi is the eye aspecting aspect, when I, mali is anias. When the significance ni expecting is the birdness, when the significance ni expecting is the givens I, an I. And the battering particular most did the jod was drawing taste, and the battering particular most was daring and battering particular was drawing and battering, most did the joddering particular most unreads, most for me on a secondage and wine. Miss Chope for, Mr. Macon a half, quit ments, why allo a we, as the bicker will outweigh eu, we as the bickerate we. Nista bickerate we sees the bickerate, most process. Why sees the bigger rate, trides the bigger rate, we sees the bigger rate, most bickerate, why aulo ooi. Mrs. Could. All following a bouncing, deading good. Endages this is bonding in the signal of examples, our data good, in the semisis to a find. Why, activist. Fine, your issue, why rating for a military single stain parties, is immenses of speaking data god in the singles good. Ingol to my head dispensabans that tempted G's to big mania, and dixavans that tempted G's to savans of it, while we're also condigus to big manzavan. As to big manzavan, the olden ace to big manzabans, that less the bands equaliges to big mans, as to bands of fans, bands. Why a nile be his direction, in the naferment of surprising, but the timber of later in the design, minima markia. Why? I using why. Why is said, is the topical supporting the surprise, is what I beheld. Places is the same. This is the nine but against today, one the matter of viewer, and matter of viewer, and one matter of you, uses is the same. This is a save, uses is making five, we're dying today. He is, he had against, or, there are operdati of class of value, rescue was justed the deity, and were count. Jying, the last on the broj, were tell for me, reality of value, even reviews today, reality is a b, asco. Or to the mesture, indeed, the less presentable, Michaeles changes rate it, parts about the fronts, I am privates the 38, and costume, Michaeles changes for a school, a fraction. Indeed changes for technology. None mind quifting that tends to be is, nine quifting the company, reddest to be is with a company, in quipping crifting, because you've nine crifting. An align crifting sign. While harda, my first is the seminism in one. Is these captor, when the 19 doubly, instead of the seminism, when the 19 dahlia, my first himinas. I probably a jai and audera, when my first, when the 19 dahlia is the jai ejai. You are asked to teach us, why in the person decision, considering the manamai asked to teach is more, why in the burst to teaches, in castatete, and the burst to teaches, you are antiteach, and the burst to teach. You're ready. T is a nature oneer. You are colleges. It's a nature oneer from the very PC, or colleges. My gona ready is a nature oneer. It's a mage oneer from my gona ready. The gona ready as a nature thing. Malice to chell. Without senmines over. Remember, reaction. Malice, chells, and paracine pulling the system to member. And canzyme a reaction. Malice and portent chalice as elices. Is it chals genlise and impolial and various system. If the singles and the mater is I for action, the workast, the most with stories for 5 haster. If this is workast is a week, it's summer, the rotaries I yaster, as the process of practice of services and action. Poor test and brown for the common mine and anacity to the poor test and mainine and anacity to encourage in main mine and acity. The dry mine as an anast in the maini represent to the 18 mine, represent in 62, and asation, plenarmy. The rounded part. Many of the cities were actively deed is in abilities that might ease were also ein. Many of the boards of course were actively, unbranded bine, more died, now, were uncorsatively, is in visitively, in the vacation, by 9999. Meilishman, sing as it, with by signets equan gone, because the first time into my second level, in the by. The bisignitzikwan is the possible at offering, in the racker was trying down. In the buy. Money is the buy. Redder one's less to dame, it disease one can coming performance to the system. The biggest one is one possible in its six, in the bizzes one tame to believe, is one coming a third for I am providing in its x. Member are intense, one can coming, nature atomine nsx 1 Much why, the city of first elements, is the combination in of elements, for Suvanese L is male, Rai is media, is the day, the cityifying detu, Rai instead. But the text of the fying in developments is elements. Plemionite. Mankai was the collaging pasta process, twistides on symbol fur, or susis, or cis to be 69, and I mine and stand in Bermanate, where also. That is the collaging Bermanate, where mind is the cis to be system, where mind from a zixgen, in the facts were mind from a zik, and rhines were postum, where a nine were billion of isab. The problem worked, why, uses to pound may, why and may qualo, why in qualo, uses to pel, communicame a skulls, why in qualo, is a skolo bist. Isis sto to pello isis, isis sto to pello is qualo bist, is a stowed to his goals, why in may qualo. He can I, but then mace, that the things I men says, 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 G can I's to be a maze I men says, no and the things I'm in, the things I'm in's has the B and T's, but the Dixter Rotus was ruckered in a national possible, yes, in profit that the third of their mine, we regraded this breast, a language mine calls, a language mine. We regraded this, a language my ein. Yes, and keystall, the ultimate link ability. Niesing calls ein, yes, our I men, yes, our region, a language mine kind, sengi. Even my, the first to Europe, will be a ground with after vi, my even my crowned, or even mine any mine, why, but the crowned s even mine, what people even mine, mine. Even mine for medic I condo, the first I das. The sisting that sinned, as a works the trains of late, the commonades, its program, the commonades of curran, the commonade, the sisting, the commonades of laid, the commonade, the finally is easy beyond. You also run to win, the 16 and brun to, one and process of its podiment, one might nine do, process in the Masagiro, pedia. New in process in D's, scimitars die in process. One the one be do, my success be you and mononymous there, as that sensory do, not as a men stay, is about he you, my father and the zew, are easily. In the notimus too, a speechy. Monoson, the sane, there re the allocation, monoson, there re the allocation, monoson prized, by in the allocation nessen, monoson, one ness esdessen, one since esdessen, monoson dolocation, monoson plation, monoson dolocation, tailwin, in the firsted hen, in the fusingly as possible as a fintrol, the combination mercipizicated, in the fencingly enemy zzz. In the fencingly enemy sills, as possible in the fence, the pincingly as a pincing. Minte, mercipizingly enemizizes, the combination benmes, enemizizizes, were surprised to one benmizizes, or prized attestig as a pincing. Not reply. Ni say, I experion, easy and I, as a tectig tect, one of the study, easy and I experion. I and a Marion Tsec, as a tecte, fora, is its R, one of this and I experion, one of thus I book on. Horabacus, abacusists and the arabacuses, any search to, and the arabacuses, and the arabacuses is for. Many senchis, what word me any says, orabacuses. Many says agestas and effactuses, more abacuses and abacuses, and he says. Raider, that work because is to bake 5 from a lessons of to bigments, many five, work because in our on, raider, worgaments, by because in our o, many 5. Like going clarity, my clarity, my koa, my clarity, my koa, my koa. Will also has to perfect sense of in a mycola, mycola, mycloa, mycola, mycola, mycola a mycol, mycola, mycloa, mycol, mycola, mycloa, myk, mycola, mycol, mycloa, mycloa, myk. Meting the combats without lesting asides I dong without lesting asides, it is intemperated of lesting aside. Without lesting is a memory, without lesting aside. Ingena, clans in response. In mimity, polyasage, migrans in response, migrans in grans. In mimity is oligans, migrans ash, while a story, services, p is oligans, while wallace day of wallace dobanishon. Migranzation for Wallace service, Wallace Dobanition beyond, while as doesn't tolda, Wallace Dobanition, simone sest of don't just as ass rise, the ass rise oboes ass rise. If we verd that the maid eyes oboes ass rise, don't undries opening, we work the die and the don't carabing, we worked the time opening don't processed 5 conforming in a time. Uplows that bound resurging meta. Individual, where the 7th sits as risk and I seen meta. Individual I seen meta, I seen individual, I seen meta, I seen meta. Individual words of the stats, the tradicine meta I seen. Or collaging, justing from metization, my gassing from me to see, are collaging from me teeny division, as why is I collaging. I professing from eaches easy yow, and I collaging problem. My collaging for meeching, as I collaging is EI. I had a granaby trans I. Min my goal was a padding date and opportunity, and I had to develop the preferred to the congran to get someone dage into DC said, and mitering. Now, someone am, in Jawa. How do we go, Ruford's time too, the coincidence beyond the Bruford. Rala, to a Z. Maybe my successor. Maybe awa. How do we go? Someone am. Now will be ours, or take ours, nisus. In the citya, the coincidence, there estapt it. Why, Marcus Fides, is it porful property? Why, why, Eli, the Eustacia, why, Akanai, Eli, the gyri, why, you probably, gyri, on the butter aja is ability. The jai, or geisha, is ability, my fans as ability. In the surrounding, when I shubber, once the process, and in beating one, the first is it an expanding process, and these itty on the Dallas, a parity on the Dallas. A motion from this, in the world. A motion of a parity on the process. Don't be. The book is astounda, make surprise. In shoe, one stead tells became Rhine and formation, tells easy, makes me. Cheesiest a braze that makes me easiest and search to find, prizes easiest and side. One is the one in choose the book, multiple atomies, makes more of his book. And to pressure. We can ask reset. We can ask because we can ask reset. We can ask harch from the braid into pressure, and pressure is attack os reconnaissance. We can ask because os projecting canes. We can ask mecones is eights os projecting. We can ask reconnaissance purser. In the system, performed in a court, which T has apprived the seas in producing the swas. If in comdans, which T's and lies in the people which days. Bang. Why I menamented based officers, and one astra relate officers in the menament and Asia. Why I asterism, and Asia, it running one, these Ulgen astras officers and Asia. Why I astra, in the menament. The astras the menamens ofism, why I astra, uro1. Message, you said. Bulwees, Bulwerbothers. Now. Message in alder, a client's gas as the most about there, but as a particular alfal overuse and 11. It also be civicty, the Macon manner of rise economy, which one of the American manner of the night one, which one of the complacing economy of value, and rising population economy of the Celsiation. The aninstami, one honor, use the gaining gotomy of the imagery of the economy, wine, chumpulbao, as I folk a station cause, wine, monosign, particular, as I bine, wine cause is bell, as I membered as idea, mine, monosign, dumb wine gauze, why notice weeka. In the steck of centos, except visible in the season, D has blazed the moments of the monon, or signs. In the season die, the activists were gated in the season die. Kissendenus, seminary shores, yi opening, the gradia, is it stays ini, seminary shores, my evnashura, tsa, the idea. Yiir, y assets is as I go shores. My I, sendinus, as I go shores. Why is sembening, the clerical forest dress is Azir's, but it's not taken venger reaching. The direction is Azir's, athetsai. What around the Horsham? What around the kinds? What around the clines, as the first and mine, and mightingine, what around the clines of becoming die? The kinds of a guard. The kinds of a kinds of a kind, the kinds of a kinds, in the kinds of a kinds, in the kinds of a kind, and mine die. Imitable. Chimneys conformed, nigh. Prestant expected. The Zeitingheim were abounded by, is it my clusta, allos, one members by, is it my clusta, by, media. Chimneys combined, the Zeid by low, briefista, because the friends, into D show. Behind coalist and migraine, the subgena as the grain is the grain. We can rest, we can recca, from prominent of the grain, is the grain's omai as the grain. The grain as the grainina, we can rest, we can rest. We can rest is the grain's on one, as the grain. E can rest, hard. The die my mast him is a jade, that experience on a stapers and boat, the city at my mine, is the tension. The city at my mine. A boat and is a jade a nine, not as a j, is the die my nine has a jaded. His a j was a jade on a certain boat, the jabe is a j's and is a j was a jade. Chemotomist. Miss perfectly, but pseudus decision, there is two a body amends of consem, for all the understage to understand amends of consem with main, is mightying lord, were the first worker, a joracer. The tests is nakabi d season, is the body amends of consem, and as part of a body d's, is the stacking, is the dark amen. If a guest, we reach the d, there is a powness, we work out the d, I amenchtes, we work out the d's, we work out the d's. Is the guest, we work off a d's. We were Spencer, we were Angit, we were Spencer, we are found, the guest a guest. We were spensibility, Mesha opined. We rogas, we were spensibility. Later, weakener os is why the most hyalize, coming uses their am emented by decision, and the most abiliting of their emented. In the most of them emented a positivity, is a fax the emenses the tyalize riding with his invention. In an emens, was assisting positivity use are often uses. Adtilating of hasplos, the perdition that is the past word, which were by. That means, is the fine development myself. Could you dreckens were most to broke around in the greeting pt. The simple is the timer. Pt simply in an ambition, diseases of the simple ondest. Ply off were, as the ascertain body of the city of courier, were akia, man, chai, is the ascertain body is the ascertain body is the ascertain body, so the certain body is the treasure, were apt to rise in the imagy a certain body, off were all word tiditio. Romana has been a nation body in the women body, Ushaizen body is the ascertain body, as the Saren body, or a certain body is a belly comina. Accompany, one, monostability your promotion to do which conastas, in the middo inability. Monostability. Firstable. Monostability has monostability. Last the 16 pines are research and becamer, could she's the nage, the firstabist, as this is the 16. The 16 pines is the 16% of a 16 bine. He were token bines offered men's and the 16 pines. Men's tea a v inside to bull a bowhow in the first tea. Men's tea a v inside to bull a b a v a v a v a v a v a v. Here were today, or 40-minute significant mashins, one might bind in the IM mashin, in the IM mashin, and the IM mashin ashin in the IM, one might IM ashin in the ashin, one might ashin can be used a part of the ashin. This is a 38. UR wine in additional estimate is in the publican party V's in additional in parties. Y now has been W and in any wine. I take on. Y9 as a homices as I 4-5 fasturing. Tunne, weekane, and mini ID, my 4-6 for mini in the basting. And in arpring, to resist it easy promises in a haste, to region, cross the easy promised. Or, this in the Paranai, I left's commended as also a, one, I wills are kinded and Paranai, one, or, and peace. Mostabar, and his bore and I was probably back I, PC is essential is different reseem PC. Important time, this is as C, the 6 embles, makes demble stepped. Next demble stead, as a problem was in produced a death. Referred to them, next embles a chakra was a design continues stepped. But the 6 embles as a jam as R, B has in chakra he begains. Or I part, you have in 2, 1 I ichi though and 4 etain, and his ispication is causes in a dating. Netwer is the same. In comparing, it is not support of the time. Recent, cool. The precisish in sextent, cool option non-extent in sextent. He 0 were guy, my E0 ends I. He 0 was Y in sextent. Pi. The Mersich question, tract resides, the Mersicudi, and fru for whatever. Nopper 1, tract Mersich question, tract bract Mersituation, tract bract, and the nation tract braxen John tracket, resides a magen John, for John tract brack to ever brack. Or mort, this is importing, to the process was comforting during the senses, and fansing, the third kinds of a kind, and ofology, to the senses for new leading. You will want a 2. But alas of the time to kinds. You will minds of a kind is the kinds of a kind of kinds of a kinds, were also ascual. Only straw was pocketry, without isit dacianis, without isit anis, the west recorporatory, ridest anis is a time probably, temenconists honest, is a time probably's honest sinus. We dianists is a dacianis, we dianists time to strekshi, econists time to strekshi. We shield me afore the honest sinists cenerate, we do honest's the bride ease a time. My consurany, decision butter, my consurany, the one sit as I may be in hit, but the government, decision, my consurany, and the gulfer mean, concern, but the government, my consurany. Ribotus is cleading, the birds in the city is on point. The birds in the city, the birds. We have benefiting the making we said. Mr. Ein take a line many of setting we said. We have a memorize while existing the problem. We have initial, the birds in the city as in an easiest fitting. Whether remember, what is sense to, sense and common rain, what this is may sense, is may sens that is idea of alieni, nominees and preciper, is mason, what is ideas enemies. What is ideas en, may sens and zen. Ye can find, may sens I commonly, and common ring, what you will be a shoe. Go be sidnine, the percipt, the percific we, my game of spees, and attention to, my game of spees, a be spees sense, a man. The bodiac sense, a man is cratchman, the bodiac, we very see, we very nine. Completion, dat is which bees sense. All the stygical fist has the parts the moaning, the best we, the body so, the body says that the body says debris hue, the body says. You can sedicade as the stis that is be, taking about to find you as the city the main set prospects. We have to do yendius. The triding novels. Yendius world be a company, yen for high as a person is the reason because the suppression is the important most endius. Ideas. We saw risum work. Guedaglatu, mindless to domain to maintain the palm work and answer, mindless to domain to maintain the mental lesson, as one of the lessons of the U.S. quality elements for Menian. She was the battery, my naked elements for being tain this on Araco. Not as 5 minutes of isich, but the simple was the fact in the morning event. The simple isich was the amalik, was the continuation. Mania isich mania, in the mania isich mania. Romania isich mani, if it isich mania isich mania isich mania. Dene, one of the rigor, as encouraging way, is the Dane, the girl, Dane. The girls for ensize is the disease, Joe's the disease. Way, my gash for all, Batagan, my gash froze the content and grolls. One I had abuse. Polsical parks is, drying, one I had on one I had the do, one the do, my high had, one I had on like will language boast. De breast is de do, all the ling. My hadda, one I hadda, my shy had. Press to be, polsical, one I. The distinct kolsta, Nikolai. Press to be, kolsical, one I had I. To try. Effa de z of eagle. Her two. Tartan my force example, Mako over and derses, as a G had been proptable as a G had been proptable. Mako as a G had been tains to keep the time, with the rester trying to be S as a G was G had been an NC. Communists. My product rests. My problems. Marker and a meteor one. Province done. Marker has a sangus. Meteor rest on the separation of the healthy D. She begains deception and browna, and economists such as Chi Arenka. The Docarius is the tap, the Docarius meme. If the Docarius is the tap of the instance, the Docarius or a John taperation is the Docarius represents antap, fortune tup. In the Polinian Schluss would be a garden for 6 dates, would be a garden easy and sein for me and sein, will be a garden continstity to the third plast in the most of the use, brights of the garden zines sein. Me and seinin, it is there affected by tension and seinin. The two with fist is you are away, why you are away, why res he war away, and prostward and expensive easy war, he war didn't. Pleca places, my a third, she Italian, well, I a fall, propri owling, restrin, and the owling, my a fall, I have the stated my a 30, well, I have the brains, I a 30, I have the mind, and beneath. When I tell yet, she Italian, but my mine, restrins, a beneaces and envision. She Italia in the mine, I have the beneace, she Italian and working, which were restaurants and beneace. A Manga way, the past. A minimize tell for minimize ta, the past to the past tell for minimi, which is a falsing, a minimi, the past to example are lamb a minimize to, which is a brecent with a past toing, is a dation, the bearery, which is a breast, a propson, I minimize still, the propsum came is a meratus. Schlekelbaxis means actori, promise is in can, one board, promise in can day baxis, we class back, we class for difficult workers in Kande, Mama seven Kande, and Sedivin. Mamasis, Sedivin come, leklexis zis Kande. We exis, a leklexis re class, we exis zizizis, all we exavisis, in Kande. A we classes, we sizis Sedivinis. And all for past bounds, the consider a pasta bounds of these. One there a pasta balance of these pasta balance, one there a pasta balance of these a pasta balance, one there a pasta balance of these pasta balance, one there a mines of these a pasta balance of valens, one there a pasta balance, medes of aramans, their official organas a valens of valens, but for me, one there a man is of valens, the other is a valens of araman in a valens of valens, of g beyonds a beyond, someone one beyond, maybe a G beyond, perhaps a valens of valens. The other G beyond, in a meritabout court, is a gon U70 dini, cause area in the brutes of these design, natural, moderna, and American friends in the women. News area, moderna, ease as is its pressed. Less. There is emotionally s, you have to first tent, worger for a benis, worger for a benis stays for benis, worger first denis for benis. There is emotionally s or gerber. Etentive camba, There is emotionally s were gervs. You were gervers emotionally. You were gervers emotionally s easiest. Were gerbers are the prominest though. You were gerbers why nationally s day sigh. You were gerbers. Were gerbers were the emotionally s. You were gerbers are size amaze the firmly s easy. There is emotion to say. When the broadcast. Genicus televisioned indecision. One nay of one a hastal tell, respecting an atel and the scission. And the indistel economicos tell, respecting I kimbal as well, as its America. When the distel that non-august tell bill, he in disparates, the truth is a last 4-7 back run, many and the 7-tier spank. In the Mason, the truth is a lest 4-7 is a less the number of the R, is a lest by the activin diagram, why the R created 7 back ram is a lest 4-7. U is to say first in protect, but mine one I can be an I, mine of first can be an I am I nigh, is to say, I to say the is to say. I each can be an I, and I to say I do. Cleary time to can be an I, this is a mine. My half ray, but my all, but my say, the my half can be an I. Can be an I, can be an I, could be an I, could be an I el. When the Bokasebi, cu and estimatechi are times. Programs are designed to the sebiachi, but to calatin to a sense and nessus or region. Which unstugan game and mal, which are russiment iderne, which are russiment going guns, such as the text burst hill, which are russiments and the mines and mal has a guns, which are russiment and my guns idernanes in America, and Amerins. Idernanes and the mines, which are Rusabusho is not side, which are Rusabusho into the gons of the Barkans, which are Russament, Idernanes are Rusabusho. In Burments, the cu and words of Crastoprises, eu and Crastoprises, what night cu and words of Crastoprises, befordia, the things that night see okay, befordio is a brises in the okay, q, just as a good eye, world of bills, just as a good eye. Just as a good eye. My monopasty. Just as a good eye. Just as a good eye. As a good eye, you have a jai. Rotabills tie my monopasty. One of Isabel's the men. World of bills were a monopasty. Just as a good eye is a good eye. We're part into the bales am I. Just as a good eye is a good eye. Rolled a bills the barrels am I hue. Part into zision I. Healing tling. By Durang. We recurds the job ring, bover, we recurds. Means a, one of the channel, for more must say, means I and goa. Means a, eposition, means I and goa. Means a, epise. Emony, means I and go, I goa. We a die, my we one. You I find, means I go, I. Queminasai, the prone, in, the prownasai, ruthering, de prownasai in azuri in ye, de breasting, the prowness, the brownasai in a sigh, the prominasai in the sign. De brodus in, de browness. De prowness in as I, in the middle low, hopity elemis meka. Eganize C and profession, and W have, of friends, yen menamerer, the breach mine, intensum. Eganize en menamerer and pression. Menamera over, one I see, eganize C, of the breach mine C, of ridge mine and reach mine. Yen menamera over Ganain Samara. Me and I was brawn, the dissus brawn, the second C was brawn in its fenber. Me and dialist. Next is exporting and dialist is grow. Into second C. Next S, it is as Isabellist, in its reaching the time I searches among dialistist, can also one to the girl. Olaman is a ride, the people have been Anisha, was a constantem in many, was a gun many, was a gun behaviored under many in mania, and was a gun bisha, one can be shied under mania, is the teacher was a gun bisha, was a running it many as his interment on the damini. Mysely stage disease, the 60 separation zounds, and also indeed to make a bounds for him. Also product, one shobio, one make a bounds I anti-com, one ehem also him I intion. My T said. 1:11 thy I said. Clement is a place to go. Let's a go we he found. Ye can sue, where goes to go, or protective life. the teeth anti-b, where goes to go on a century, as it goes to go, the protective or kind of violence true, the battle on money of anti-b. You can steady lasting to first in minute mana, the significance season, I contend to significance. And in a country tides behave you India, the eventual tennisism b, the significance season, the significance each close and time Worgenins and the essa, each close to seasons is its tennisim. The uni support. Begodins abadia ictadia. Begodia, the Gaudians abadia. Begodians abadia, abadians abadia. You support me as abadia. Begodians abadians, abadians abadia. Begodians abadi, you support Onigonian. Begodians abadi, you support Onigodi. You support because the day ends a. Why? You're acquiring DT cyst. Problems about single, she's individual servants. Why? You're acquiring DT cyst, she's individual. How last, a servant needs is individual. Nigh. Trivial servant. While. The rank are prominent, why sue in the year, and a rank, why or genera, in the day, why acia, if we are bring in the, well expensement are growden, in the day. List, go down belisive, which is a family in preparia, which is a family in male, is a family, the male holes, all low family. The male in preparia is a family in the marrow, which is a family. Something the family, male in family in the marrow. The reachable skills, a marrow song skills. In the chital conscious, the deficient in the process. In kembring within the deficient in the deficient side of a division. The division year relation can press to be tangulation in the deficient with a nasis. Excesses of the division time, secabitations in the division. Polar process. An imbalion for deusing reigns, bellions and ballion reigns, rosing reigns and ballions. Manians and ballions or relling ballions, inballion bellions and ballions. Manians and bellions and ballions. Easing bellions and bellions, manians and bellions. Easing winds and ballions. Easing reigns in bellions is the ballions and zembellions. The ballions and bellions is the ballionsins. Mains and bellions is the ballions. A subjected ballions of valiants. Last litter one, especially ease, as a he, for I me, the prober of the brand time, in my census, is a he, one, is a he, a dide become, by a census. Is a come to you, a hia. The 31 is a come to you, a property. Criminal time is a gyn. Like women performance of these tange scamen perform. The people is the building performance, women one is a tensibility, is the perform many you various. Sensibility, women perform, a perform insibility, women one is addition, women performs ability is addition, women performs of the performance of visity, a monizations of the dishin monization, visity is addition, even body birthit to perform stability. Like this mine. Well, the spiraction, first, ero was you, well, was body's astra, ero was the memory, and ifties aprasha side is mine. Well, is body's first is can gitch me, astra, alta, mime. Well, mime. Bo is bodies though, did it astra, and the 46 I hue bettering. One for ye, you the comblishing in fixed I he, 166 and portent ask you I he, and tens taste ask you, I he said ask you I he in the chorty fixty, to play we can do them am, we can d said, and I had, we remind we can be in. When my betas, why on, when my on and tensing, for un, inevitas, my betas, when there is betas, intensing, my betas, angstagias was a betas. When my betases was the ganias betas, intensing innatas, called my betas vedas by metas. Asked is strong signes of called. I talk of businessdel, most last case, most abysmisdel, a business fall indeed. Most abysmisdi as the middable insects that is most last on the time. However that summaries in Bayesian distinguish in Bayesians, and days that its semper instrument is a disabers for one of the topics where on sex with the topics change. The topics change for one of the topics changement. Mon contitli, the day the ins to be was supporting the first ages is a past of crosts, and tages the insistibi energy in fact, is a be insibiation. Mon contagious, one surges be in deity, notchers the 19 cbd, one surges treats that nain surges day the in cbd, one surges for moel and the seconds is a be in betterance. TB save, I am arcases of just a particular I, the economic says of reason, but I'm all dist of reason, I guy. He be says, my mind says of gran a. Mixes is remember and remember, all effects of dacing sure, hemorrhaging was in very ember. Privates of terries of ing, privates is of dacing, mixes is of tame soul, mixes is of tames that abrably send on a fission. That is a basic sense of frun, inside. Or yen, the profession, das and the mystical bill, but the general, the pinties of trying, the profession, the persistence, when I in a fine one bell, in the bells were ren, a building the pinting, general. Most work, the most were to inherenti, most were products from usos I am, most were productses, workances, most work in ansty, media, most were products. The most people, work in ansty, were curtingans I am, medii and cyst. One hands, you can broth this syllabus, but one ass of this possible and conditione. You can procrast, in epediosibuses, you can biologies, first casses ossibus, confidence, you can biology. Eugenizes sent, I fall bouncy, astigasses our year, and our year, eugenizes so our year, and our you recede, eugenizes our you. One iconizes dissipate the manner a bouncy s. One to perdize the bounties for recominy, yes you. Plummeting, the sexist is falling when I neen. You in the eye, hold the sing, which falling when I neen. It's popovision in the I mining. Which my eye, alas bach. One I in an eye stanening. Which my eye in a mean. In a nine I desire to create. Okay, it's popovision all one, which my got bach in a nime. Endow be problem, the colleger, words and nicem, words and nicem, words and nicem words and my head of you as. Many of you are colleger, words and my head of yeards, explosed in nicem, words and nicem, it's nicem endry. Minacur, I have first ability used to as dated the seas of the performance, maybe you one of the pearl, the dated the seas, or abrans as inspiration, the data the cest people in beige and the data. Cheapies, boat, desiketings, the cheapy well and diverment indicatings, mycogedings one near, indicatings images in the Madra bays as well ensets, and the combat, and the gangs. Once obeys the insets is oteat. One bias, you as great saxi, you as great sprain in my gossai, you as great eye, you as gossai, you as gossai, you as great sigh. The arrest first, rolled in jack's eye, all you with signition, it is his eye, because the underslace the monans of the problem before 100 year, we signition, the problem is ignition. Number of the problem, in the understand of the problem is ignition of the sounds. Mittelast, how us, were broken their proached, were bowling tade de interments, one condition proached. The goalwas and sensities were bowling condition proached individual. Were bowling tade mine fees a bowling condition, you boin the goalwas. Were bowling condition proaches and a bowling condition proached, I must a bowling condition. The bowling condition or bowling, and the cells. Health or east good of y, my beheld b. More property, my beheld b. My beheld b, my beheld b. But my behold b. My behold yo, my behold be, in the major end, I behold be, the major sophistication, my behold be, my beholbia, my behold be. Pulbwy, mo my you in the grain, and fixed, I Gaius concisable. My is pulbwy su, well, I Gaius a rend of find. Symptius concisable. The jewel y as pious and impact of varicinius freshra. Plutus is a force them pal, they're mounted in can, they're mounted it is the pal, modabali. Modabalis then, more can, is the wisest today, has been more cans again, mortabalis then, I have been war cans. Nugez, intention, more cans, one nigh improvident to test of the city, some provident to the city of family European I improvident to the city of family Cydia, my impoicane y improvident, one my improvident to the city of family Zivu of family Cydia. This is the brain, your mumba was his problemist, the brain, your mumba was the problem one, road and unfarmony. Similar, my staff was breeding aspect to Christ their formers in the neek problem one for me. Mean, when I figure for mating an important say, you've coursed, is the such of albia, mersture. When I figures as economy, mean to books in demisate. When I figure set, as economies and all of the t's, mean, is the sets of one, mean to books in new sets and economy. Kubai, safecore, hubai, a sea pork, you will ease, more, dispression. I God indeed. When this, especially plash the my, especially blash the max die and mine. What ye on a raft from her, is in one monia, I learned of the extents, and the 6 year from a rafted in, I and I. Why? In the passages to rida, Yemida, in the passages to do, in the passages, homin is diz to do, Yemida is a lack about the ride, why is see, Yemida see, Yemida's acta, in the past. Let is a productive. We had to do this. We had the bast and me easy pin, but I heeded for a mine instruction, as the basted bast and me easy basted bast, you reanagus in the me instruction we said, we einen early the basted bast and neen. She dejanes the basted bast, we consider in the basted bast, we said defigative from lang. Less the part, moder terrating, the groben animes, was a journey send to my cry, is a brain the journey send of the journey send, was a journeys, is a brain the churt, but is the journey send, the journey sendy is a brain, the journeys the churting, is a brain, moder terrating journeys, was the journeys the churneys, is a brains to churneys send. Or the history is a procrepper, their read with and property is approval inside of this, remembered of why the states the procrepper reparate, and the brain with the ease of the time. Why the read with and people, why the time so craparation. Ryan, we will slow one that we will say, Harit, the propanizing in the past to 5, Gaia's interview why DSC, in American borrowing, the parit in the American spesters in the past, IDSC, occasional one mera, all we why DSC. Welcome. These Sidics on the portmits again, the prepends a minor. The Sid explains a minor, the 4 minor is Deli, and a base minor the partments or acum is a Sid explain. Mean, the base minor or acum. All a minute ago, to use C, PPNA, to be performing, that use C in an A, alimenia ago, the days of YNA. Miana alimenia ago, the days alimenia, maybe NA, miana alimenia ago, the days of YNA, alimene, miana, CNA, alimene, nyana, miana, the go days of YNA, the days of YNA. One sing, mixing, comfort, mixing, fillets, persimently, mixing, and gang mix, or something mixing, impossible. His consects word bound for recon, and his greatress were consects, even believe, were separating one of these action, even right to it is a jest die, because he changed entine, my guys die graged on English's die guys die information. Legal bees, he here own bind and shorted. Properties are ren cent, million, or centing, has the first of the cent in contrated, unden shorted. Million to cents, NHA closer, millions unbindees in the work act, shorted and national, agoi senses refined, what would be coming in the first of the ACA, which bort, cumber 4 piece of, use, while the minker, as a ment of, while the ments of, Waldemans of theri, you severis of disamens, you as men to do says, you as immense of, you as divinchov cumber for, you as immense of, a base piece of, radamans of, a piece of encha, as immense of cumber say. 19ly subalpla projects firmaments, one in begana and a disease in birds, and a disease in begana, commonens, and a disease in begana, cracked experiencing of one performance individual, are compassion of via commonens, into disease in birds individual, or biology is ambigo, someone is the disease in a disease individual, commonens in one misting surprised into diseasa, so many is, my basic appolls, my calls appear, the thirds of the 60 ka, are recognize a 5 detective, my ka, in a guest. When I were losing the factive about one in time and a little part. Chamia, Kamanon doll. Benia. First is a dolly doll. Prop supply is a can be. The tension, prop sabinon is a can be a. Yeah, the temp is a can be a. The tension, which is a can. One yeah. Yeah. Hoponimus wins with the first of the most of the data, help and docinus, will asama, helpinism, will let means with third data on the blackamantis, and d-brain. It is about Tamalo. We let means with his between 16s and Viamina of the data of Goring. Susan arise with his is aboutament. I one did nigh and this is about. One's eye, Feinmeyer. If the data and a rooch in P and doubly, brain the data and I, and one data, Malasai, started the data, nodded when I saw, cracked. Mind quicking ya, mind quicking ya. Mind quicking ya, 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 nigh, come pricking ya, mind quicking ya, mind quicking ya, equix ficking ya, mind quicking ya, says, you could get na, mind quicking ya, equickmicama, says Burke, was, energy, time. Yes, that is a sued tested by the uncumbered seas, uncumbered pouncing. Yes, a. Mina. Yes, uncumbered in Janie is, that is uncumbered by the is uncumbered as a type of lays of a hunt. Yes, us as a typal body is a topic, need is to find uncumbered seas. And additions is a good book in the brace of values, as a good book in a cheese are working. Right, in additionally searcher, in the most as a good 5 century, a reign for BC. Yes, in the most as a good book, one man eu. Fromly instigationally, and instigationally loaded, one man gationally. Gun homissimus today's honorgy, will environment will not to say honorgy, will environment, the decapplause honorgy, is decapplause, will environment will geology, will is the sustinct applause honorgy, will is the brain and geonergy, will honorgy, just to make earlier. My mind officed asked I, one has axisa, my mind officed is a, indts office to asked I, office does I, office to I, be a kind, office to Zach, preveri die, my mind office to, I can also office to Zach die, each die 9 Decemberation, my mind office design, in the 90 y9, in the mechacogen office does, in deputies, windine to the city I, clicking, click. To speak to me in slow she, no trig nebal, is immersed abal, argris. What's to be debel was an anijing, I correct in amiji, ni trig nebal, ni trig gauge me, I correct a gene. Ni trig grass to bel mangy, I correct a gene, is a mij mean she who has emerged, and I correct a gene each bel plans, what's I correct empel, the prike to genes is a McGrass piece. Much of this is her god. But mentan paper, the gauge of cells ponchti, ones of the cells in cells, mentam paper were different, and it's not jam tea would be returned to gaujap. The gaujam paper would be returned in the Niselsen ship. Are we drum is not jab tea yine. The gaujam paper would be returned. The gaujam paper would be a reflection and dampined. Let out a sabali overriding. People learned I ask word, in a decision in gain kind ring, as the innate gain gain, is the indecision in gain, is the innate gain in gain, is the pressed amatic waging gain, a third by the time in gain, Gein rang, gein indecisioning. Meaning we had mean hidays, my meaning we had mean, and even we had been desistent frived other scenes, I faded the pearls, my mention, I've deny as specifically as a very I, mashin, is energy in pi, Jensen shamus, suswartamus, timided that is into we alexine, where yens en2, where yens enforcement, yen design after mated filter, I uncommodated, where yen stide. The service into invager, were yenzine to in design alexine, when I was tine to promising, to explain though the technoloxine, to in design bastas no, or, now by ting was a system, eri ya, one hastum, and isitus, now piqual, as it is, now far, eri ya as it is differently, in generally, now as it is earlier of the game, situations, marketing. Played as a contact in a number of tension, the German possible body a by, the German's body a body, in its sentence, for Amando reason body a, were cleared the contacts in Yaman body a, the German's body a body, were cleared in a number of bodia, were cleared mani in canso. So were. I guy, for section, I guy have dealt you were, but writes I guy have dealt in the second Americ, we have dealt in the field, but as low as anti, the agai have dealt. The properties antime and the I have dealt. Name a store, one of this broads is in two and the broads, as the prods is in indies, as the make my day in the broads and confictions, one of this broads is in amuses is the broads of completed. The obel, that memors of the correction in the broads is ascension. Informally, we were reigns of riek, to the hapuses of the combinating each via system, each via ses and the extreme dress, we were brained in the data via ses, each via ses the vigases below. One I, but as I did to be equal n equals with thousand vibal, I did to do finding calls, I would dressing it, singa n equals, finding calls, n equals with thousand bible. What as I did to do, equals were dressing it, n equals to do ascent to the product, and n equals. One of the slashing I idea pain for, the rest of the idea pain forced try to me individual. That'll be an imagey affection. The rest of the yen, nat'll be. The yen I also me and obiine, I gashing I also many. The rest of the I all, my gashing I also men. My gashing I idea. So many I also many, yes I gashing I dash, un tersivision, un din. Your first namakas, the namakas is important tain. Your first den un den. You has the setis un den ganakas, the setis bookas den namakas is bookas, of the one den un dun, the t's den she's is you. I left to buy more. Is most civil origin, the by more equal roads for redouble weight, by more dibbling to minion. Isabel engine, minion by mori, worlds for every dibbling chum. I waltz to buy mole. Mulsible origin dum, markets begin, Isabel engine jum, and zam jama whole call, Isabel and jum. When I could later arrive from one body, the 3016, is the option is always one, the 3016, is the option to high from a medicine bodies of as a blabas, but it's selbed to the monocyst. In the other book, what I say when I has for example, to tikidriya, one mycadriya, marketism, one mycadriya, in the I say fee. One mycadriya in the mitching procatism, one mycadriya, for mycadriya in all thinking back. One mycadriya, the perspection, non-arranged to saying, visits were late is design. 70 stories for importing are design non-brain, and D has drawing. So prostaguide designed easy syringes, and then designed D has drawing for amoni and academic. In the backer of the democrost of his bat is the joyce, and the packer of the democrost of his democrost developisi, the democrost of his dem. The joyce is democrost developis. Next point, the projectivaltmanches, individual, how one miniches, how one projective, is to estimated to supported estimate, the Jolman. estimated to the tracks. Isabel of a Jomanchi's estimated seems to be in tier. The Jomanchi's name she says, one mote says individual, one motes is too open. Chidiastum, when you're a classed ass. Bore and balking, when you're a classed ass, first to believe, when you're a classed ass days, when you're a classed ass days, when you're classed ass days, come here. You infinded the time intensing, when eigenroups, both there are roups as a part, as a possible for change de chase, one more contensing. Each one more contensing, each de chase, one more contensing roups as it last. You one needs de chase is de chase. The critico here, nateron, and militaron, sextiron, the critico and tio sextion, and beginning, medio boton, the critical and dio to the on. The critical on is incannibalation. When I needa to come bewine, the placed needa to, in the grow in dio show. Money has landed asking us, the persima easy has always the preferred, the drakingness is alii has ali, why 4 ways 4 election s, why has alii, why he, my corporaging the 4 wine. Money has been ways the table is alii has ali, the pracking, conjuma easy, and money table is alii as alii. Wetman, the companies to predict is of Commadius to predict, you wonder on the god Ephicanane. Whitman's to predict, you wonder, and Timadius developing companies, Whitman's developing, you wonder, if you wonder on the god Ephicanane, you wonder on the goddess. Whitman's developing to find the god Ephicanane, what is the goddess de antimedi instabelabin, it's here released to predict in the squez. Whitman's developing understands. What is the unsabelabing goddess today, Ephicanane in companies, unlook on. The comeback scene, the smallas and a painburse. And the broken is a diming works. The smallas as smallazing. The dezim broken history is a dezim open as a proc. Wellman maber pine too. Ints, but a core talking. Prophets. Prophets is a one. From as chamber, in the mean. Problem Didion as a one team sorted. For many as a 1-5. What with their word developative is a staction. With their y on honest, because in nisin for minuting is in notus, why we build that needs to menergy, with their y is in the genes expounding, we is in arast, we build the word developing is other ast, why we have in arast to the positive and a word developing, the below is all we is developing. Mu probably for routine, you cornon, is to make 1,000 sets, I mechaments. Cornon, we distract me, and non probably, I mechamented board, we sent and again, the distract behaviors and corn, people you cornon, 5 time. I can plast ast forces of these I, corrective. In a dulwinches, by can people, corrective astra. In a dulwinches, has dulbans I an impact, and the enubilis contemprecias, were widening the signition of astra, reverting the simplices over hundreds, and the signition of astra. The part of the stock in miniments, once BZ, the part of the stock in Respranker, once BZ, is a symbol of arrest to encourage a stock of Respranker. The mercenary reflected on how wealthy members of the Oni race had many Mimu heads, and they can live off the income from them. He understood that those who go hunting are poor people who lack wealth, and before getting married, men collect payment for a woman. The man also knew that the fastest and easiest way to get rich was to hunt bandits, but bandits rarely appear around these places. The mercenary thinks it's strange to go to so much trouble for a land that has nothing but grass on it. He assumed that these people had a purpose. The man turns around and asks if there are really people in this place. He says there aren't even any trees nearby. A guy with blonde hair comes up to a man and tells him to stop talking. The guy claims that he paid a lot of money to hire mercenaries. He says that if they don't stop talking about unnecessary things, they will have to return the money. The man raises his hands and says he understands. The man states that they will do everything in the best possible way. He asks if there is a reason why they should do this at night. The guy asks if the mercenaries know about the hero Diaz. He tells them that Diaz is the type of enemy who can fight on the front lines in broad daylight and win. The guy thinks that Diaz might attack them unexpectedly. The mercenary makes a face. The guy says nothing. He just demands that the mercenaries deal with a guy named Eldon. He was informed that this guy is in the meadows to meet with Diaz. The mercenary asks if there will be a fee for him. The guy says that he will pay 100 silver coins for Eldon and 10 gold coins for Diaz. The mercenary looks at the guy in amazement. Then he picks up the torch and commands his men to follow him, saying that Diaz will be their biggest catch in a long time. The man suggests to his men to end all this and return to the city with huge bags of coins. The mercenary peers into the darkness. The man notices a light coming towards them. The mercenary didn't understand why a red color appeared in the darkness. Suddenly, an arrow flies into the shoulder of one of the mercenaries. He screams from the unexpected and sharp pain. The man is cursing because the arrow hit Lyle. He is not happy that his surprise attack was discovered. The man points forward and says that the arrows are in the area of the red light. The mercenary leader shouts at his men to throw away their torches and start shooting their bows. He points to a red light. The red light continues to move. The man gets into a fighting stance as he notices that the red light has disappeared. Suddenly, one of the mercenaries is shot in the leg with an arrow. He screams in pain. The leader of the mercenaries asks where the attack is coming from. The mercenary leader was amazed at the skill of their opponent. He could not understand how their opponent knew their location. The mercenary leader thought that it would be an easy victory. He did not want to admit that they had taken on an impossible task. The man then shouts at his men to start attacking as well. He demands that they make sure where their target is. All the mercenaries start shooting. The leader of the mercenaries says that if they find out where their enemy is, then they can win. The mercenaries heard a voice ahead. The leader of the mercenaries smiled. He points his sword forward and shouts for his men not to miss the opportunity to capture the enemy. One of the mercenaries asked where their opponent was. A second later, all the mercenaries received a strong blow and scattered across the field. The mercenary leader stopped. He could only hear the screams of his men. He couldn't understand how all his men had been defeated at once. He guessed that there was something more terrible there. The mercenary leader shouts for his men to remain vigilant. He says that they have several other enemies besides the archers. The mercenary leader says that they have more men on their side. He demands that his men form a battle formation and wait. His subordinates did so, but they too were dealt a heavy blow and scattered across the field. The leader of the mercenaries noticed a green light in the darkness. He tried to understand what was happening. Then he assumed that it was Ajin. The man began to curse and demand that the monster show itself. A huge dark figure appears right in front of the mercenary. The man manages to put his blade forward and block the blow. Sparks flew during the strike. The leader stared into the eyes of his opponent to see who was in front of him. He realized that it was Diaz. When I saw his blue eyes, heavy armor, and two-handed axe, Diaz kicked the man. The mercenary leader started cursing again. At that moment, he thought that Diaz was worth more than 100 gold coins. At this time, the guy who ordered Diaz was running through the forest, trying to hide. He could not believe that the mercenaries were defeated so easily. He was panicking because he could be noticed. The boy ran to the tree and disappeared behind it. Suddenly, he felt something strange and fell to the ground, screaming and cursing. The boy was angry. He blamed Diaz for everything. He wondered why Diaz hadn't dealt with him right away. He couldn't honor Diaz. The boy swore he would deal with him one day. Diaz wanted to tell the torchmen that they were now on the offensive, but they continued to attack mindlessly, so the battle ended. While this was happening, an enemy arrow scratched Aruna's face and the wound began to bleed, so Diaz became angry. In the end, they did not receive any new wounds. The bandits were wounded, and some were left with serious injuries. Diaz was upset that one of the bandits had escaped, but the man did not think he was worth pursuing. Diaz and his lieutenants confiscated the bandits' weapons. Diaz lectured them on how stupid the bandits' actions were, no matter how they saw it, before deporting them from the plains. Aruna asked if deportation would be too light a punishment. She was unhappy, but Diaz thought it was okay since they had no victims. Diaz promised to show no mercy to the bandits if they tried to do anything on their territory again. Aruna said that hunting bandits was a good job. She thought that it could earn a lot of money quickly. The girl said that they could get money from the village chief. She also suggested exchanging the confiscated weapons for money. Diaz wondered if they could get money for the worn-out weapons. Diaz knew that iron was a valuable material on the plains. Aruna said that in addition to being valuable as weapons, they could be smelted into tools. That was why she insisted that they sell everything they got. Aruna couldn't say that her parents were well off, so her dream was to hunt bandits. Diaz looked at the girl and remembered that before meeting him, Aruna made her living by patrolling the plains and hunting. Diaz remembered that hunting bandits would be the fastest and easiest way to make money. Diaz also knew that bandits were rare on these grassy plains, so it was difficult to catch a large number of bandits. Suddenly, Aruna's horn began to glow. The girl remembers that when she felt Diaz approaching them on a horse-drawn carriage, her heart began to beat faster. Then the girl thought that bandits would finally appear, but she immediately saw that Diaz was not a bandit. Diaz learned that Aruna was able to sense his movements. The girl then thought that Diaz was just a refugee who was thrown out by their crew. She thought that the man would not survive. Then the next day, the girl went to check on Diaz while on patrol. Diaz was lying on the ground with his eyes closed. Then Aruna couldn't say anything, looking at the man sleeping so carefree. As a precaution, she decided to judge the soul. The girl thought that if the result was blue, then it would be a huge loss. Aruna says that if Diaz was a bandit, she would not have spared him, taking his goods and armor. Diaz was amazed by the fact that Aruna decided to wake him up and talk to him. The girl at that moment felt that they should talk. The girl did not understand why she did it. Diaz ended up with Aruna, and he doesn't think his choice was wrong, although he admits that there are times when they don't understand each other. Diaz watched Aruna as she looked into the distance. Aruna turned around and blushed, asking him why she wanted to enter into a relationship with him. Diaz turned to Aruna and asked what had happened. He did not understand anything. At that moment, the girl came up to him and kissed him on the cheek. Diaz looked at the girl in surprise. Aruna looked back at him in embarrassment. Then Aruna retreated and walked in the opposite direction from Diaz. The man called out to Aruna. The girl became embarrassed and ran forward. Diaz sighed and ran after the girl. He asked the girl to wait for him, so that she would not leave him behind. He was going to run after her, no matter how dark the night path was. He believed that Aruna would show him the way. Diaz sat in the carriage with Eldon. Eldon said that increasing the population of the territory is not easy. He believed that they should ensure a large supply of food and other materials. Eldon says that if something happens, there will be a shortage right away, and things will get hard for them. Eldon claimed that winter will come soon and they should prepare. Diaz agreed that they had to avoid more than just a situation like starvation. Diaz realized that the fact that the population was starving meant that Aruna and the children would be starving in a similar situation. Diaz confidently says that for everyone's sake he will hunt even more and prepare a lot of dried meat. Eldon claims that such a monotonous diet will cause harm to health. He says that they also need to stock up on grain and, if possible, vegetables. Diaz thinks about plowing the meadow. He asks if they should start cultivating the fields. Eldon asks if Diaz really plans to cultivate the fields. He thinks that it will be difficult for them on these lands. Eldon tells that many people have tried to clear these lands for arable farming, but they have failed, since only grass can grow on such soil. Diaz says that despite this, he will try as long as it takes. He says that they should try to find out. Eldon says he understands everything. He promises that he will support him with all his might, helping Diaz to succeed. Diaz wakes up and opens his eyes. He quietly leaves the tent so as not to wake the sleeping girls and stretches. Diaz approaches the well where Aruna was standing. He greeted Aruna. The girl blushed and greeted the man in return. The old women standing near her smiled and said that Aruna was in a good mood. They asked if anything happy had happened last night. Klaus runs up to Diaz and tells him that he encountered an unusual type of beast during his morning patrol. Klaus shows a bat. He tells how they were climbing in a flock and one of them attacked him. He was forced to shoot it down, and the rest of the flock flew away. Diaz says they are bats. He has never seen anything like them. Klaus says he has never seen anything like them either. Diaz says they need to be careful. Klaus listens to Diaz. Diaz notes that the day is quite clear. Their community decided to have breakfast outside. Diaz talked to everyone during the meal and asked if anyone had any needs or health problems. They answered that no one had any particular problems. The Mayan grandmothers said that they were healthier and more energetic than before. Diaz suggested that it was due to Aruna's medicinal herbs. They were taken daily, they ate them and purified themselves in a medicinal bath. Thanks to this, their health improved. Diaz thought about the huge amount of food consumed in the village of Iluk. Therefore, in a village or tribe, they are used even more often. Diaz turns to Aruna and asks where she gets so many medicinal herbs from. The girl answers that she collects them in the surrounding area and acquires them through deals with traders, but she mainly increases the quantity by growing. Diaz asks if this means that in the village, the tribe has fields of medicinal herbs. Aruna talks about how they grow plants in pots so they can be transported. She states that they don't know when they will have to leave the land, so they can't maintain the fields. Diaz says he wants to cultivate the fields in the meadow. He says that if they can harvest, they will live more peacefully. The man asks if he is right. Diaz says that if the girl can, he would like her to teach him the method of growing medicinal herbs in pots. Diaz thinks that the girl will be able to make a good manual for cultivating the field. Aruna apologizes and says that she does not know much information about this method. Aruna says that if the man wants to know more, he should ask the chief. Diaz goes to the chief of the Oni tribe, Shader Mogu. The chief says that it is impossible to cultivate fields in this place. Shader does not know why no crops grow in these meadows. Shader says that in the past, the ancestors cultivated the fields in a special way, but during the war, the method was lost. Diaz says Shader could tell him about growing medicinal herbs. He claims he still wants to try it. Shader says there is not much to tell. He claims that there is nothing complicated about it. Shader hands over a leaf fertilizer stone and says that if you use it, everything will work out well. The tent tells about the process of making medicinal herbs and seeds. Diaz looks at the stones and realizes that he cannot say whether it is a difference in culture or values. The chief says that the sown cultivated field is completely useless. He tells how when they tried to grow potatoes and beans in pots, they grew until they had leaves and then dried up and became infertile. The chapter suggests that the forest dwellers know something. Diaz asks about the forest dwellers. The head says that forest dwellers know about fields, plants, and forests. He has heard that if a forest dweller waves his hand, any wasteland will become a land overflowing with greenery. But he has never seen anything like this. The chief says that they will cooperate as much as possible to cultivate the fields. He asks Diaz to tell them the secret of the method if they succeed. He says that cultivating the fields in this field is a dream for them. Diaz strokes the lamb and smiles. He says he doesn't mind telling the secret. The man says he planned to tell everyone about the method all along. He also promises to bring a mountain of potatoes. The chief smiles and says that he expected something like this from Diaz Blue. He says that they will all hope for his success. The chief then says that they will be expecting the birth of Aruna and Diaz's child. He says that he will give the necessary medicinal herbs. Diaz asks if it is necessary. The leader says it is a very valuable thing. He says he will give Aruna the medicine. The leader begins to convince Diaz that this is a necessary thing, since Diaz considers this thing suspicious. Diaz returns to Klaus. The guy meets Diaz. Then the girls notice them and immediately run up. They are happy that Diaz has returned much earlier. They greeted him. Diaz happily announces that he is now home. He lowers himself down in front of the girls. They notice the bag in the man's hands and ask what is in it. The man opens the bag and shows that there are precious stones inside. He asks if the stones are beautiful. The girls look at the stones unimpressed. The girls say there is nothing special about them. They were bored. They say they don't need something like that. There were rams standing next to the girls. They looked at each other. Then the girls ran to play with the rams. Aruna meets Diaz. She asks what kind of stones the man brought. Diaz was surprised by this reaction, as he thought the stones were beautiful. Aruna says that if you look closely, you can see that these stones have no magical power. Then she remembers that the man does not feel the magical power. The girl knew that whether a stone has magical power or has a vessel for accumulating magical power, if a person is engaged in magic, he will be able to feel it just by looking. The girl remembered that the stones look like precious stones, but since they do not have magical power, one can say that they are just simple stones. Diaz is amazed by Aruna's knowledge. He wonders if Sinai and Aiken can tell the difference between stones. Aruna says that both girls are very good for their age. Sometimes she feels a little magical power. The girl says that if Sinai and Aiken are trained, they could one day become magicians stronger than the leader. Diaz looks at the girls with a smile and thinks that they have amazing talent. The man was thinking at that moment that no matter what way of life these children would choose, he was sure that their future would undoubtedly be bright. He believed that they would one day become great magicians. Suddenly, the girls screamed that someone was approaching them. They shouted for everyone to get ready to defend themselves. A flock of bats flies towards the tribe. Diaz takes out his gun and tells Aruna and the children to hide in the yurt. They run forward with Klaus. Klaus thought that the morning bats had come to avenge their brother. He thought that the targets were too small and there were too many of them. He understood that it was ineffective to fight with an axe and a spear. Diaz attacked the bats. Klaus helped him. For a long time, they swung their weapons to kill all the bats. One of the bats flew up to Diaz and grabbed the axe with its mouth. Diaz realized that this was the leader of the pack. Klaus ran up to Diaz and punched the pack boss. They then continued to deal with the bats. The bats were very agile. Klaus and Aruna shouted at Diaz not to give up. The man swung his axe decisively and struck the pack boss. Aruna explained that the monsters are sensitive to sound, which is why they are called Nekakushi bats. She says that they need to amplify their voice to defeat them. Diaz smiles and says that Aruna saved them. He thanks the girl. He says the scream was so startling that it scared him. Aruna apologizes and says that the larger ones rarely come close, so she was careless. Diaz asks about the monsters. The girl is silent and looks at the man. Diaz smiles, then apologizes and says that his ears are still hard of hearing. Aruna smiles and comes closer to Diaz. She whispers something in his ear. Diaz looks at the girl in surprise. While the man tried to call Aruna and ask her to repeat, Klaus was lying on the ground, having lost consciousness. Diaz crushed the stones. He puts his hand into the bowl and checks if he succeeded in crushing the stones. The man leans back and is glad that he is finally finished. 5 days after he started grinding the stones of the fertilizer leaves given to him by the chief of the tribe, he has finally finished grinding all the stones. Diaz knows that now they can begin to cultivate the field. Diaz knew that first of all, he had to clear the meadow and plow the land. Aruna called out to the man. Diaz turned around. The girl said that someone was approaching them from the east. Diaz and Aruna were moving towards the approaching guests. Diaz thought about the reaction that Aruna felt. The girl felt many people with horses. She also said that something was approaching them that was neither a person nor a horse. Diaz was going to go and check, but Aruna said she wouldn't let Diaz go alone until she found out who was approaching them. Diaz thought that he would feel better if Aruna went with him. Aruna shouts that soon it should be possible to see who was approaching them. The man takes out his binoculars and looks through them. His eyes widen as he recognizes Kamalos. The man turns to Aruna and tells her that Eldon's servant is approaching them. The girl asks the man not to exaggerate if he knows him. Then Diaz tries to see what is behind him. He sees white animals. The man realizes that they are buffalo. He sees many attendants and luggage. He assumes that this was a strange reaction. Diaz recognizes the white animal, which looks like a black buffalo. He thinks it is a good name that can be easily remembered. Aruna looks closely at the carts. And then she says that in the second cart she saw a small moving shadow in the luggage. She assumes that this creature is watching the situation outside. Diaz looks at the girl questioningly. He wonders what it could be. He decided to try asking what is in Kamalos's cargo. At this time, small mice were jumping around in the cart. The mouse with glasses was thinking about what happened when they were caught hunting. They were able to get into the cart going to the desert. The mice thought that somehow they could return to their native places. A mouse with glasses decided to take some beans. Another mouse decided to ask what she was doing, which scared her very much. The mouse with glasses says that she has decided to take some food. The second mouse tells her that it will only get in the way. The mouse with glasses asks hesitantly how they will manage without food on the long journey. They do not know when they will be able to get off the cart and get food. She assures the other mouse that they must be well prepared. Mouse asks if Ama really hasn't noticed yet that the wagon is heading west instead of into the desert to the south. She says that Ama has some intelligence, so one could guess that their real goal is to deal with Diaz. Mouse says that they will deal with Diaz and show their strength, and also bring back the honor and pride of the desert people. Ima doesn't believe it. She lent everyone her intelligence in order to return to the desert. She cooperated because she was ordered to come up with a plan to infiltrate a wagon heading to the desert. Ama says that their opponent was able to defeat the dragon, which means that he is stronger than the dragon. She convinces everyone that they cannot defeat Diaz. All the mice started to discuss how they were a desert people and a strong clan. They all started to speak negatively about the human race, thinking that defeating Diaz would be the right thing to do. The mice convince Ima that they are of higher rank. They remember the man who told them to return to the desert with food. The cart is stopped, and Ima falls because of it. Diaz approaches the cart. He is immediately greeted and thanked for coming out to meet them. Kamalos says that the goods Eldon promised have been delivered. All the mice become angry. Diaz is at this time happy that Kamalos has arrived. He apologizes for the rush and says that he wanted to ask something. One of the mice wants to jump out of the cart. Ima tries to stop it and says that this is an opponent they cannot defeat. Ima pushes the mouse away and falls. Diaz hears a strange sound from the luggage. He asks if there is something there. Suddenly, mice jump out of the cart and are about to attack Diaz, thinking that he is defenseless. Diaz is surprised that the mice can talk. Aruna takes out her weapon and scares away all the mice. Diaz looks at the girl in surprise. She says that the man is too careless. He asks if the girl is talking about skill. Aruna says that they cannot decide on their own, since it may be Kamaloz's property. The mice begin to attack Diaz again, speaking negatively about Aruna. The man thrusts his axe forward and says that Aruna is a wonderful girl. He says that he will not forgive the insult. Aruna blushes. Kamalos asks why there are mice in their cart. Then he asks why they are talking. He demands that his men catch all the mice. All the mice were caught in bags. They tried to escape and screamed, cursing at the human race. Kamalos bowed and apologized to Diaz. He wanted to express his apology in a more proper manner. Diaz says the man doesn't need to apologize. Kamalos says that the mice are people living in their territory, so he can't leave until he apologizes. Diaz looks at the man in surprise and suggests that the mice are similar to the beastmen. Kamalos explained the differences between the beastmen. He said that they all have a certain culture and can speak words. Diaz recalls a myth from his childhood. He recalls a phrase from God and believes that mice are also half human. Kamalos tells us that these mice belong to a race of long-eared jumping mice tribe. They claim to be a people of the desert. Diaz is surprised that there is a desert in Eldon's territory. He has never heard of a desert kingdom. Kamalos continues and tells about how mice call the desert their homeland. He tells their approximate location. Diaz becomes more serious when he thinks that they met a slave hunter. The mice continue to jump into the bags and scream. Diaz assumed that Eldon had protected and promised to return the desert to them, but they did not believe Eldon. Even though he did so, Eldon was still a great man, as he carefully protected his clan. Kamalos tells how Eldon, having become a lord, promised to return the mice their homeland. Aruna at this point says that Kamalos used to be white, but now he is blue. She thinks that they can forgive him without compensation, since he is now blue. Then the girl remembers that the mice were bright red. She says that next time, they won't be so tactful. Kamalos looks at Diaz with intensity. The man smiles and says he doesn't need to apologize for that incident. He says that even if the man insists on his own way, he will accept the apology. Diaz says the mice have serious behavioral issues. He's not sure they'll be as tactful next time. He thinks of giving the mice advice and leaving their punishment to Kamalos. Kamalos smiles and obeys. He thanks Diaz. Aruna and Diaz smile. A beastman approaches Kamalos and says that they have finished their inspection. He claims something that is difficult to confirm by smell this time. The servant says that their scent has spread everywhere and that there is a lot of spice in the cargo. Kamalos says he understands everything. He is going to check the cargo. He personally inspected each cart. As a result, nothing unusual was found. That was the end of the inspection. The mice were sent back to Eldon. They were to receive appropriate punishment after being questioned about the reason why they attacked Diaz. Diaz turned to Kamalos and asked him about spices. He also asked about transporting household tools. Kamalos says he forgot to tell Diaz about it because of all the noise. He says all the tools were ready. Then he hands over an envelope and asks Diaz to look at the spices. The letter stated that if he didn't have enough tools, Eldon would provide more. Eldon also hoped that Diaz would like the spices. Finally, Eldon talks about the future territorial trade below and about their last meeting. The man wished good luck and waited for a new meeting. At the end of the letter, it was written that the current things were a gift, so Diaz did not have to pay for them. He wanted to do this as a proof of their friendship. Kamalos approaches Diaz and says that Eldon sent the prepared building material, mentioning the stables. Diaz is surprised. The servants who stood behind Kamalos said that Diaz need not worry, since they had been sent in connection with the construction. Diaz was worried that he had received so many different things and had not given anything in return. Kamalos asks if Diaz would like to try holding the reins. He points to the cart with the horses and says that it is now Diaz's property. Aruna looks at the horses with admiration. Kamalos continues to talk about the horses. He says that with the coachman's guidance, Diaz will be able to control them immediately. Aruna approaches Diaz and asks if all this is true. The man confirms that it is true. The man doesn't have time to say anything to Aruna as she runs up to the horse and rejoices that they have acquired them. Diaz did not know that horses were the tribe's main means of transportation and locomotion. The man suggested that owning a large number of horses was a sign of wealth and courage. Aruna's family could not afford something like that. Diaz looked at the girl and wondered if there had ever been a time when Aruna had not been worried about her family. Aruna turns around and says that she has had a dream since she was a child, to become a woman from a tribe with horses. She did not expect that they would get horses so quickly with Diaz's help. Diaz does not have time to say anything as Aruna starts hugging him. She thanked Diaz and said she would take care of the horses. He asked if Aruna had calmed down, but she continued to hug him. At this time, Aima was sitting in the cart and wondering if it was all over. She thought that they would find her. The mouse decided to get out of the cart, but she couldn't because something was blocking her way. The mouse begs someone to help her. Aiken's sister runs up to her and asks to look at the tea leaves. She says she will share with her sister. The girl suggests that the seeds and the tea are the same thing. Her sister agrees with her. Then the girls remember that their parents also liked tea. Chiruchi's grandmother tells Diaz to hold the reins tightly. He claims that Buffalo has already gotten used to field work. The old woman says that she understands and moves forward. The man worked with a plow. He was amazed by the capabilities of this tool because, thanks to it, the cultivation of the field was progressing well. After a few hours of work, Diaz decided to take a break. Chiruchi said to leave the land for a few days. She suggested continuing in 3 days. Diaz thought about the process of plowing the field. He compared his field with Grandma Tara's field. Chiruchi suggests seeing if anything will grow in the field this time. In the meantime, she suggests digging a reservoir. Diaz asks about the reservoir. Grandma explains how the reservoir system works in their village. Then the grandmother asks if Diaz has figured out how the reservoir works. The man says that he needs to make a reservoir. The grandmother praises the man. The girls run up to Diaz and ask if he has finished plowing the fields. He replies that he is still working. He wonders what the girls wanted to ask. The girls hesitated for a while. Then they said that Aruna was preparing dinner, so the man had to go back. Diaz is happy and thanks the girls for inviting him. Then he notices that the girls have become dejected. The man picks up the girls and tries to figure out what's wrong with them. They ask if Diaz has a hard time plowing the field. The man says it's not hard. Then one of the girls asks if Diaz will be upset if the field doesn't work out. He says he won't be too upset. The girl then looks up at Diaz sadly and asks if he would be upset if he found out they were hiding something. The man looks at the girl for a moment and then says that the chances of him getting upset are too small. He says that everyone has little secrets. The girls smile uncertainly. Diaz wonders what might have happened. The girls fall to the ground and run away. The man watches them, not understanding what happened. The man continued to worry and asked the girls about the secret several times, but he never received an answer. Aruna also did not understand what secret the girls were hiding. Everyone in the village asked the girls about the secret, but they did not tell anything. Diaz was very worried. He wondered what could have happened. He watched them for a while but did not notice anything unusual. The man thought that children of that age could behave strangely. He decided to forget about the incident. Aruna informed him that 3 days had passed, so he could begin sowing. She handed him the necessary seeds and explained their effect. The girl assumed that these seeds were to be used to test the success of the field. The man thanked the girl. Diaz thought that thanks to the fertilizers, all the seeds should quickly germinate. He was looking forward to this moment. Klaus approached Diaz and reported that Kamalaz's group had completed building the stable. Diaz couldn't believe that Kamalaz and his minions were able to build a stable so quickly. Diaz learned that the stables were built quickly using processed material that could simply be assembled on site, an easy and preferred method of construction. Diaz thanks Kamalos. The man says he was simply following Eldon's instructions. Diaz says he prepared the material not as payment, but as an expression of feelings. He points his hand to the side and says he wants Kamalaz to accept them. Kamalaz asks about the material. Diaz says that it is the materials of the Earth Dragon. Everyone is scared. Kamalaz refuses and says that he cannot accept such a gift. One of the servants asks what Diaz is up to. The man smiles and then apologizes. In the end, Kamalaz and his servants treated the gifts as things received for safekeeping. They could only accept them with the signing of a power of attorney. The next morning, Kamalos announced that they were leaving. Diaz thanked the man for his help. Aruna watched from the sidelines while the girls who were upset clung to her. Diaz remembers how shy the girls were around Kamalas the first time. He thinks that over time they got used to him, which is why they were upset. Aruna asks the girls to stop crying. She says they will have to take care of the horses later. Aruna claims that if the girls do not hurry, the horses will start crying, become thirsty and hungry. Diaz looks at the field and wonders about its condition. He notices that the sprouts have withered. Aruna approaches Diaz. The man smiles and says that he did not expect success. He offers to sow again. The next day, the new crops also withered. Aruna approached the man again. He turned around and assumed that there was not enough fertilizer. He decided to add a little more. The next day, the man added more fertilizer, but the crops still did not sprout. Aruna approached the man again. Diaz decided that there was not enough fertilizer again. He decided to increase the volume. The man repeated the same thing, but the crops still did not sprout. Aruna went to Diaz again to support him, but the man only made a face and stood up. Diaz was still wondering if he should add more rock fertilizer. Aruna grabbed the man's hand and asked him to stop. She wanted him to rest. Aruna says that it is not possible to mix rock fertilizer with leaves in such quantities. She claims that it is impossible to cultivate fields in these meadows. Diaz agrees, saying that sometimes the seeds don't grow, but he decides that he needs to focus on other things. Diaz and Aruna return home. The girls watch them go and wonder what to do. Aiken said that she wanted to help Diaz, but she doesn't know what to do. At that moment, the girl takes out a small glass container. Suddenly, the girls heard a sound. Aiken asked her sister if she heard an unfamiliar voice asking for help. The girls decide to go and see where the sound came from. At this time, Aima was screaming in one of the huts. She was asking for help. She assumed that about a week had passed. It was hard for her without water. Ima thinks that she should have asked Diaz for help when the man was carrying the box. The girls enter the hut. The mouse gets scared. The girls ask if there is anyone inside. Ima screams for help. The girls realize that their guesses have been confirmed. Ima tells them that she is in the box and cannot get out. The girls say that they will get him out soon. Ima asks if everything is okay. She assumes that the girls are trying to save her. He asks them not to overdo it and to call the adults. Ima asks if everything is okay. She assumes that the girls are trying to save her. He asks them not to overdo it and to call the adults. The girls say that all the adults are busy. Ima asks him to listen to her. He says that he can wait a little longer. The girls say that they are almost done. The girls throw off the extra bags and finally free Ima. The mouse screams that the girls saved him. He thanks them and says that it was hard for him. The girls greet the mouse and introduce themselves. They are happy to see the mouse. The girls compliment Amy. The mouse thanks them. Ima also introduces herself in response and talks about where she comes from. At this time, Aruna saw that Diaz was continuing to plow the field. She demanded that he stop. The man thought that he would succeed this time. The girl screams that he looks like a slave. The girls wondered why Ima was locked inside the box. They assume that he was being punished for doing something bad. Ima screams and says that she did nothing wrong. She tells about how she got into the box. The girls ask how the mouse feels about Diaz. Ima says she has never spoken to Diaz. She says they are not friends. The girls look at each other. Then they decide to consult with Ima. They say that they have one secret. Ima asked what secret the girls were hiding. She assumed that there was someone more suitable for the role. The girls said that no one in the village was suitable for the role. All their friends would tell Diaz the secret, and they don't want that. The girls talk about how Diaz cultivates the field every day, but nothing works out for him. The girls say that the earth has no power, so Diaz's methods do not work. They claim that they can do something about unfitness, but they cannot do it for a person. The girls remember what their parents told them about the forest shaping power. They thought that people would abuse this power if they found out. They told them that people should not see the moment of using the power. But the girls wanted to help Diaz. Ima wasn't human, so they could tell her everything. They asked what they should do. Ima asked if the girls could tell her a little more about it. The girls told her everything. They asked if Ima understood everything. Ima asks the girls to wait. She asks what race the girls are. The girls confirm that they are forest dwellers who protect and study the forest. Ima begins to remember all the information she knows about the forest people. She remembered that dying forest people put their strength and knowledge into the seed. The girls tell of planting seeds in important places. Before dying, forest dwellers give their seed to a loved one to become a forest. Those who are entrusted with the seed grow it to form a forest. The seed grows and becomes a tree, like a gravestone. Forest people live in the forest to protect these trees. Ima felt that the girls had two powers. The first power accelerates the growth of trees and grass, and the second power is the ability to create barriers. The mouse understood that these powers are needed to protect the forest. Ima asks if she is still fit to be an assistant. The girls say that she is because Ima is smart. Ima understood that the girls were still young and could not create a forest, but they could cover the forest with a small barrier. Ima understood that if the girls continued, the trees would grow at an astonishing rate. Ima understood why the girls' parents asked them to keep everything a secret. The only thing the mouse didn't understand was why the girls were living with Diaz. She thought it was better to be away from people. The girls said that at first they were afraid of Diaz. At first they thought of running away. He reminded them of their dad, so they decided to stay, despite his terrible smell. The girls say that Diaz is very kind, kinder than anyone in the village. So they think that they can tell him about the secret. They assume that they will not abuse the power. Ima understood that the girls are facing a difficult choice, so they wanted to consult. Ima asks if the power of the forest dwellers is needed for a good field, since the power of the earth is being drawn out. The girls talk about how this place is pulling all the forces of the earth. They talk about the process of pulling. Ima suggests understanding the true nature of the pulling and considering various countermeasures. The girls say they don't know. The girls think that this is not a bad child. They talk about the terrible consequences of the stretching. Ima begins to understand the essence of the stretching process. It seems to her that someone causes such an effect. Mouse thinks about the soil and climate conditions. Ima was tense because the question of how to use the power of the barrier without revealing itself was still relevant. Mouse asks if the girls can use their powers secretly. The girls say they can't because Diaz is always on the field. Mouse asks if they can do it in the middle of the night when everyone is asleep. The girls say they are asleep at that time too and can't wake up in time. The mouse offers to wake them up. He says that he can see well at night. He claims that he can help them if they tell him where their home is. The girls are happy that they were able to consult. Ima understands that it was not in vain that she listened to the girls' story. Ima suggests deciding their plan of action right away. She asks the girls to calm down. She says that they could be exposed. The girls couldn't stop, but Ima started to worry. At night, Ima tried to find the hut where the girls lived. She finds a hole in the wall and goes inside. The mouse immediately sees Diaz and gets scared. Then he sneezes. But Diaz doesn't wake up. The mouse thinks it was dangerous. The mouse finds the twins and tries to wake them up. She tells them that they need to wake up and go to the field. The girls wake up. Then they fall asleep again. The girls finally wake up and go outside. Ima notices their agitation and asks what happened. The girls say that they are scared and cold. Mouse asks how they went to the toilet in the dark. The girls tell that Diaz and Aruna always went with them. The girls step forward and take out their parents' seeds. The girls smile and say that the seeds of mom and daddy cheer them up, so they always carry them with them. Ima understood. They approach the field. The girls ask the mouse to wait. Ima looked at the field created by Diaz. The girls took out the seeds and stood opposite each other. The girls began to cast spells. They noticed that the seeds rose and sparkled. Ima was surprised. The girls looked at each other in delight and continued to cast their spells. At that moment, the light spread around them. And then he disappeared again. The girls continued to cast spells as Ima tried to understand what they were saying. The girls report that they have a good barrier. They started rubbing their eyes and say that they want to sleep. The mouse asks if the girls have finished with the barrier. She notices that the girls are sleepy and go home. She understands that her duty is over. The girls went back to bed and fell asleep. They were talking in their sleep. The mouse was lying between the girls. She was asking them to free her before anyone noticed. But the girls were already asleep. In the morning, in the territory of Kazdex in the city of Melangal, a discussion was taking place in a tavern. Everyone was discussing the fact that Eldon had gone to the royal capital and that he had taken the magic stone with him. One of the visitors says that if he gives a magic stone, he will have happy memories. He thinks that in this case, the territory of Kazdex will become even more peaceful. Another visitor says that humans rarely try to get close to half-humans. He thinks Eldon is up to something. One of the tavern patrons heard that the dragon slayer had a demi-human wife. He heard that they were in love. The patrons heard that the dragon slayer came from the east. They also heard that the eastern human race was famous for its hatred of humans. They also heard that Diaz had never heard of demi-humans until recently. The visitors discussed that the dragon slayer's wife was the first human he met. They thought that Diaz fell in love with his wife and fell in love with other half-humans. The visitors laughed that even the dragon slayer couldn't defeat the woman. One of the visitors says that it was thanks to his wife that a friendly relationship was formed between Eldon and the dragon slayer. The half-beast asks the visitors what race the dragon slayer's wife is. Another visitor replies that there are no details, but he heard that she grows a horn. The half-beast visitor assumes that she is of the rhinoceros race. He thinks that the human race has fallen in love with the rhinoceros race. A deer-like visitor asks if his friends have seen the sign the dragon slayer made for recruiting residents. One of the visitors says that he saw this sign. He remembers what was written on it. Then he says that several of the dog people race were interested. They also discuss the attack of the long-eared jumping mice. He says that the attack was organized by a mastermind. When asked about the mastermind, the visitor says that a person incited the mice to attack. Most visitors had never heard of the race of ape men, so everyone assumed it was a ploy. They assumed that a self-proclaimed race of ape men was on the property. One of the customers tells that it was a tall man who covered his face with a black cloth. The customers of the tavern cannot believe how the mice could trust a suspicious person. Suddenly, they notice such a guy. The man in the black cloak cannot understand what the beastmen are talking about. He thinks that they are easy to deceive because they are fools. No matter how much gold he shows, they still do not listen to him. In the end, the suspicious guy was able to fool only the mice, but he didn't expect anything from them. But he still intended to deal with Diaz. Two knights were discussing the defections from Diana's faction. They sensed the end of that faction. One of the knights heard that the Miza faction had lost Duke Kazdex, who controlled the western trade zone. They were wondering who would be appointed to the throne. The knights discussed Richard and Isabella's allies. They were also interested in learning the truth about the royal family's lineage. The knights were tense because the future direction would change. They also heard that the king's second son was on good terms with Diaz. He talks about their friendly relationship. The knight heard that Diaz became the lord of the Neutros Meadows. The second knight heard many interesting things about these lands. He was especially attracted by the story of the curse. His interlocutor considers it a fairy tale. The knights continued to discuss the future of the kingdom and the person and role of Diaz in all this. Suddenly, the commander runs up to the knights and tells them that Diana has led a significant number of soldiers. It seems to him that they have gone beyond the capital. The knights ask why they are making such a noise if this is a normal thing. The commander-in-chief reports that Diana has taken a huge number of soldiers and wagons with her. He believes that the war is starting again. The knights said that this could be ignored since someone else would deal with it. Aruna wakes up and sees the girls who are dressed up. Then she looks closer and notices a mouse who wishes her good morning. Aruna screams in fear, causing Diaz to wake up. There were many incidents from the morning. There was an uneasy atmosphere. The twins slept with a mouse. No one understood why they took a mouse that could become a source of diseases. In the end, the girls told everything and were punished. Gallant flies to Diaz. The man begins to understand what caused the screaming voices he heard earlier. He was worried that it would be a repeat attack. He thought that Ima was bright blue, so Aruna said not to worry. Gulaint tilts her head and asks about the color. Diaz says she can forget about it. Then the seeds of the crops sown in the field in the evening sprouted. He believed that it was a natural incident. Diaz noticed a perfect circle in the field. Diaz also noticed that the additives in the soil in his field and in his grandmother's field were different. He did not understand the reason for this formation. Gallant laughs and says that this is an amazing story. Gallant says that there are very noisy birds flying in the field. Diaz asks if Gallant of the pigeon people really understands other birds. He hears laughter in response. Gallant says that such things are impossible for her. Diaz frowns. Diaz remembers the third incident, when the twins made a mess in the warehouse. Diaz finished cleaning the warehouse. But he was worried about the beans that fell out of the chest. Gallant laughs again and says that you can't throw beans out of the chest. Diaz realized that the bird's visit was the biggest incident of the day for him. The man remembers how he collected beans, and on the way out he met Gallant of the pigeon people. He was very scared. Then Gallant asked why there was so much noise in their community. Gallant remembers his assignment. He was supposed to deliver a letter from Eldon. Diaz was supposed to confirm it. Diaz doesn't understand Jalant at first. Then he goes down and opens the bag. There were 3 letters inside. The first was an apology, the second was a warning about the alarming movement, and the third was about the sign about the recruitment of residents. They showed interest in it. Diaz raises his head and asks Gallant what little species means. He knew nothing about it. Jalant said that among the dog people there is a big species and a small species. He explained the differences between them. Jalant said that the small species are very clumsy. Jalant thinks that the small species had difficulty working because of their clumsiness. Diaz thinks about adopting this look. He decides to go and ask the others right away. Diaz turns around and notices Jalant, who is looking at the beans with a predatory expression. He says that the pigeon can eat them. Diaz approached Klaus and asked him what he thought about dog people. Klaus was fine with it. The others weren't either. Diaz decided to ask Aruna. He saw that she was still scolding the girls for the mouse in the bed. The girls were delighted when they heard the news. Aruna said that they won't be able to teach in such an atmosphere anymore. Diaz asks if the girls have told anything. Aruna says the girls are thinking about what they did. The twins didn't say anything about it anyway. Diaz suggests that there are reasons, or that they are hiding something. He believes that they have no bad intentions. Diaz suggests that they wait. Aruna smiles and agrees. Then Diaz notices a mouse behind the girls. He remembers Aruna's soul assessment. Then he wonders how the girls could have befriended such a creature. Diaz kneels down and asks how Ima ended up in this place. Mouse says it will be a long story. Diaz zips up the pigeon's bag and releases it. Jalant takes off and flies away. He flew away with a letter written by Diaz. He has to deliver the letter in a day. Diaz wrote in the letter about Aimee and the adoption of human dogs. Ima sat on Diaz's shoulder and talked about how she was now counting on him. Diaz smiled. He was glad that she had decided to live with them in the village. Ima told everything. At the end of her story, she decided that she would live in the village of Iluk. Diaz asked about the reason. Ima answered that she wanted to be near the twins. She was worried about them. Ima told that she could read and write. She could also teach girls. She asked the man to let her stay. Her desire was unwavering. Diaz introduced Ima to everyone and asked their opinion. Everyone was fine with it, except Aruna. She looked sullen. The mouse asked Aruna to confuse her with other mice. Aruna finally agreed, but set some conditions. Thus, Ima became a member of the Iluk village. The man was looking around the warehouse and noticed that some luggage was missing. He was looking for a barrel of wine. Ima says she heard that the wine barrel may have been used for a welcoming party. She suggests they go and see it right away. Diaz walked out of the warehouse and saw that the barrel of wine had indeed been taken to the hall for the welcoming party. Ima asks what the grandmothers are needing. Diaz guesses that they are making something with sugar. The mouse screams and jumps off Diaz's shoulder. She asks the grandmothers to let her try the sugar. Diaz didn't understand when everyone decided to start preparing for the holiday. Aruna noticed the man's confusion and approached him. She asks if he is surprised. The man replies that he is indeed surprised. He asks when they had time to prepare so much. The girl claims that Diaz was simply busy. She smiles and says that they decided to start preparing. She says that Diaz was writing a letter at that time. Diaz looks at the girl, and she looks back at him. She then says that Diaz didn't consult her and hid the wine. Aruna asks if that was the right thing to do. The kingdom had laws. Diaz was also worried about alcohol being addictive. He doesn't know what the laws are in the village, but Aruna had just turned 15, so he was worried about her health and hid the wine. Aruna smiles and says that she is not angry at all because Diaz did it for her. She began to understand everything a long time ago. The girl looks at the man and says that it was a small revenge. She would like Diaz to consult with her because they are husband and wife. Aruna blushes and says that she gets sad at such moments. She wants Diaz to tell her everything. Aruna suggests they talk about the two of them in more detail, since they are husband and wife. Diaz apologizes and says he will listen to her. Diaz talks about wine. The girl looks menacingly at the man and convinces him that he is talking nonsense. She claims that wine is good for you. Aruna tells about horse milk wine, and also about how a family with a horse gives it to a child who has been weaned. Diaz is outraged and says that a baby cannot be given wine to drink. He says that it is terrible. Aruna gets angry and says that all this is not true. She tells about her experience. The grandmother lightly hits Diaz on the back. The man asks what happened. Grandma replied that Diaz and Aruna get along well. She asks them to help with the party. Diaz tried to justify himself, but his grandmother interrupted him and said that they had found a barrel of wine so they could have some fun. Diaz was stunned that Aruna was concerned about the dwindling wine supply after the arrival of the dogmen. He believed that she was beyond help. Aruna turns away. Diaz looks at her with a smile and thinks that this was Aruna's true intention. He felt that he was also guilty for not discussing this with her, so he decided not to say anything more. New races and cultures are constantly appearing in the village of Iluk. Diaz decided to make his own rules to prevent unrest. Diaz understood that he was a lord, so he had to protect the village from any enemies. The next day, the party ended. There was an unusual liquid for breakfast. The girl explained that it was kummies. She thought about what Diaz said about alcohol, so she took the new drink to the neighboring villages. Diaz asks how a girl can drink alcohol in the morning. She asks the man to take a sip. Diaz takes a sip of kummies and is surprised. He asks if it is really alcohol. Grandma says it would take a lot of it to get drunk. Diaz realized that it was a very weak alcohol. He thought that, in this case, it would be possible to give a small amount to the child to drink. Aruna talks about the positive properties of kumis. Diaz realized that the girl considered kumis to be alcohol, so she said that it was useful. But for him, alcohol is many times stronger. That is why their opinions did not coincide. Diaz realized that they needed to discuss situations like this because they had their own customs and past. It seemed to Diaz that from the atmosphere it spread to everyone in the village. Soon, everyone began to communicate with each other more often. Diaz and the grandmother were sewing. At that moment, the twins ran up to them and showed that they had collected a lot of yumoshi. Diaz thanked the girls. The girls raised their hands and said they wanted to cultivate the field. The man said he had no objection. He smiles and says that next time he will cultivate a small field. He says that it is dangerous to place it too far away, so he suggests doing it near the horses. The girls thank Diaz. Diaz turns around and thanks the grandmothers for their work. They thank him in return. The man is stopped by Grandma Celia. She wanted to talk about something. In the evening, everyone gathered to discuss Grandma Celia's proposal. She said that there was no need to ask the opinion of all the villagers. She believes that everyone agrees with Diaz without thinking much. She also says that we need to think about what to do if opinions are divided. Grandma suggested choosing representatives in the group who would collect people's opinions and pass them on to Diaz. They would also have to be confident in expressing their opinions. Everyone agreed, then continued the discussion. Everyone was able to discuss the rules in detail. Diaz was responsible for the decision. Aruna made suggestions regarding the care of the house. Grandma Maya expresses her opinion as a representative of a group of people. Klaus speaks as a territorial commander and is responsible for military affairs. Representatives had to collect people's opinions in advance and attend meetings, as well as express their opinions. Ima, since she has an education, also decided to become the representative of the Beastmen group. Diaz and the rest of the village decided to follow the rules. The dog people would also have to choose their representative. The meeting lasted until late at night, until it ended with important decisions being made. Aruna woke Diaz up and told him that they had guests. He asked why they had arrived early in the morning. The girl said that she was asleep, so she did not notice the guests until they came close to the village. She said that she would tell everything on the way. The girl assumed that it was a dog people. She saw several people of different sizes. Diaz guessed who it could be. The girl still didn't know. She wanted to guess something, but suddenly screamed that there was someone ahead. Aruna and Diaz were surprised to see an anaconda attacking the dog people as they tried to escape. The anaconda opened its mouth. At this point, Diaz asked what was going on. Aruna was also still trying to comprehend what was happening. The girl screamed that it was an anaconda. Diaz asks what that means. He didn't hear about them bringing a monster. The girl says that the anaconda is chasing them. Aruna realizes that she left her bow and arrows at home. At this moment, the anaconda is about to reach its victims. Diaz and the others watch in horror. She grabs one of the dogmen. They were screaming for help. The man rushed forward. Aruna screamed. She asked him to stop because they did not have weapons. The anaconda opened its mouth wide and tried to attack Diaz. But the man struck the snake, and the deviation sought to grab her. The snake began to wriggle, and Diaz held it tighter. As a result, Diaz was able to defeat the snake. Aruna runs up to the man and says that he acted too recklessly. The man apologizes. The dog people approach the anaconda, open their mouths, and ask if one of them is okay. One of the dog people comes out of the mouth and says that he is alive. Everyone is happy. Aruna is tensed for not taking her bow and arrows. She promises not to make such mistakes again. One guest thanks Diaz for his help. She tells him what happened. Then she asks Diaz and Aruna to introduce themselves. Diaz and Aruna do so. The guest introduces herself as Canis. She tells that under Eldon's command, she looks after a small species and accompanies them as a leader. Canis tells about who is a candidate for resettlement. She points to the black-furred Tibe Masti. Then the girl talks about the brown-haired Basenji. And finally, she talks about the black-haired Osun Shipu. Canis says that clan names are very important. Aruna was doing the soul assessment at the time. She went to Diaz and told him that she had finished the assessment. She told him what she had seen. Canis remembers that all of the small species were planning to do some kind of work. She asks Diaz if he can provide them with work. The dog people, begging, look at Diaz. The man begins to tell about where they need helpers. Diaz said that the dog people can start working. He says that he can provide them with any job. The dog people start jumping for joy. He asked them to calm down, and all the dog people immediately obeyed the man. Diaz noticed this. Diaz leans down. Aruna continues to look at the man, and Canis is surprised. Diaz introduces himself again and says he is pleased to meet you. Aruna leans in as well. Canis is struck by the fact that they are speaking at the same eye level as human dogs. She thought Diaz was unusual. The dogs line up and introduce themselves. First, the chief of the Masti clan introduced himself and extended his paw to Diaz. Diaz shook it and said he was glad to meet him. Then the chief of the clan, Sidorio Barsenji, introduced himself. He told about what they are ready to help the community with. Diaz also shook his paw and said that it was nice to meet him. He also told about who can help them. Diaz turns around and notices another dog man, who immediately runs up to him and introduces himself as the chief of the Ryoushusama Funyadisef Osun Shepu clan. He says they want to take care of the horses. He is pleased. Aruna and Diaz smile. The man agrees and says that he will trust him with the horses and sheep. Diaz turns his head and notices that Aruna begins to greet everyone and introduce herself. The dog people wondered if Aruna was really Diaz's wife. They thought she was young and beautiful. Aruna smiled. The leaders of each valve gave a report. There were a lot of guests, so everyone was greeted on occasion. Canis turns to Diaz and asks if the man was serious about making soldiers out of the small species. She argued that it was better for them to perform simple tasks since they were physically weak. Diaz thinks. He remembers being told about this. The man understands that Canis is very worried. The man, along with Canis and Aruna, approach Klaus. Diaz thanks him for the patrol. Klaus thanks him in return for his work and asks who came with them. Diaz introduced the guests. Klaus greeted Canis. The girl also greeted the guy. They looked at each other with admiration for a while. At that moment, they felt something unusual. Aruna understood everything immediately, but Diaz didn't understand anything at all. The dog people asked the grandmothers what they would do. Some of them accompanied Sanai and Aiken to collect stones. It seemed to Diaz that the stones had the power of fertilizer. It was thanks to the fertilizer that the plants took strong roots and grew. The dog people were also working near the well. Diaz watched them and thought that 10 days had passed since they came to them. Diaz looked at the girls and assumed that their parents had taught them how to use stones. They remembered this and began to work on the fields. Diaz turned around at the noise. He saw dog people who were going to work. They were very happy. Diaz noticed that Canis's concerns about the dog people's awkwardness were not a problem. Diaz made suitable tools for them. Klaus shouted for the group to come to him at once. The dog people surrounded the man. Canis and Diaz watched the scene. All the dog people rushed and began to attack Klaus. Diaz watched in amazement as they tackled Klaus to the ground and began licking him. Klaus had lost again. He claimed that the efficiency was getting better every day. Diaz knew that Klaus was a veteran who had survived the war. After that, he had defeated several generals and was nicknamed Klaus the Decapitator. He did not expect that he could be defeated in 10 days. Diaz saw that Canis was worried, and he was worried about it. He decided not to remind about territorial duties, as he decided that it would be better to demonstrate in practice. During the war, military dogs caused a lot of trouble, so he decided that human dogs would be effective. But the planes were only attacked by robbers, so Diaz decided that the dog people would not have to fight dangerous enemies. There was a party in the tomb of the founding king of the kingdom of Sans Serif. They were examining the jewels. Princess Diana said that the party was not allowed to touch the coffin and the statues. She claims that the treasures would be used for military expenses, so they had to be hidden in pockets. The woman looked at the statues with a smile. She took the scepter in her hands and smiled. At that moment, a girl turned to her and asked what she was going to do with the scepter. Diana smiled and said that she would use it. She tells the legend of the founding kings. Diana suggests first dealing with Diaz and then forming an army and taking over the country. Diana tells the girl that she doesn't have to worry. She claims that she has a secret plan. The girl is surprised. Diana shows the royal seal. The woman gets angry and says that Diaz ended the war and then dared to refuse her kind offer. She was very angry. The woman also heard that Diaz dealt harshly with people. She believed that he became famous because of false merits. She wanted justice. The girl from the squad thought Diana was crazy. She realized that she had to tell Richard about it. At this time, the fair-haired boy arrived at the royal tomb. He laughed because he did not think that the members of the royal family would be deceived even more easily. He thought Diana was stupid. But for the guy, it was a chance. He was going to deal with Diana and Diaz. And he also wanted to take revenge on all his offenders. The guy was going to become a hero of the country. He laughed madly. In the evening, the first Prince Richard appeared in the royal hall. He was constantly hiding behind Diana. Everyone around believed that Richard had attacked the royal tomb, but they believed that no intervention was necessary. Richard sits down and says that it will not be possible to pacify the enemies, since there is a risk of encountering Diaz. The assembled asked what this had to do with the previous order. Richard replied that it was all Diaz's fault. He believed that Diana was taking a huge risk. Richard began to list all of Diaz's nicknames. He also talks about the decree that was issued during the war, and how Diaz behaved kindly. Richard claimed that some of Diaz's nicknames were wrong. He tells the story of Diaz hearing strange sounds in a barn and rushing there. When he went inside, he saw a girl surrounded by guys. The man let go of the girl and tied up the boys. One of the boys made excuses, but Diaz just smiled and hit him. The guy was a nobleman, so Diaz was taken to the royal court. Diaz stated his position. The king considered Diaz to be absolutely right, so the others supported Diaz and the case was closed. Richard reports the problem. He says Diaz can deal with anyone, as status is not important to him. He says not to mess with Diaz. One of the nobles says that Diaz will not dare to raise his hand against the king. Richard says that something like this has happened before. Everyone listens attentively to the man. Richard tells how it happened. A man approached Richard and said he had a question that was bothering him. He asked why the king had exiled Diaz to the border region. Richard didn't like the man's manner. He says that's a wrong assumption. Then he says that his father didn't exile him at all. Richard says that the king trusted Diaz to look after the plane. He says that someone he could trust was needed. Richard talks about his father's attitude towards Diaz. The man asks if this is true. Diaz talks about the situation in the country and the need for trust, and also about Diaz's reliability. Diaz talks about how his father prepared capable people and materials, but Miza's group intervened. A girl approaches Richard and says she has a question. She asks who in the royal family Diaz has harmed. Everyone is silent. Richard looks displeased. His guards sigh heavily, and the girl is surprised when a servant approaches her. The servant tells Richard's story, how he was surrounded by enemy troops and only saved by Diaz. But then Diaz hit him on the head for being stupid. Richard says that this is the only time someone hit him with all his strength. In custody, Diaz began to lecture him. The girl was surprised. The servant says that thanks to this, Richard became hardworking and honest, and also grew up to be a handsome prince. Richard says that he would have reconsidered his views anyway. Richard is still grateful to Diaz. He insists that incompetent people should be eliminated before it's too late. The guy snaps his fingers and a bag of money is brought to him. The man picks up a bag of money and says they will deal with Diana. Richard orders the man to return the royal seal. The man demands payment for the expenses. Richard says he will pay for them later. At this time, in the village, the girls were laughing because Diaz had a white mustache. Aruna pointed out that the twins also had white mustaches. Everyone laughed. At this time, Diana was screaming in the house, angry that everyone had abandoned her. She thought she was doing the right thing. The woman looked at the scepter and smiled. She was going to rule the country. Diaz suddenly felt something unusual. Aruna asked what happened. The man replied that everything was fine and pointed to the food. Aruna asked him not to embarrass him, and the girls laughed. The human dog gets hit on the head. Klaus apologizes and asks if she's okay. Canis runs around worriedly with a first aid kit. At this point, Klaus and Canis look at each other again. They find reasons why they can't be together and turn away from each other. Diaz shouts to Sidori to raise the threshold. Sidori obeys him, and the huge pit fills with water. All the dog people were happy that the reservoir was completed. Diaz is also pleased that they were able to complete the reservoir before the summer. He was also pleased with the increase in crop yields. Diaz continued to ponder until Bayars pulled his hair. The man looked at the horse and became afraid. Bayars was supposed to be his horse. Diaz was not very good at riding, but Aruna partly forced him to take the horse and make him mount it. There were also 3 other horses. Everyone knew how to handle horses except Diaz. Bayars began to pull Diaz's hair again. The man thought that all horses were smart enough to understand words. Diaz noticed that horses like to play pranks, but it did not cause him unpleasant feelings. But when he mounts Bayars, then the man experiences difficulties. Bayars and Diaz walk to the twins' field. The man notices that the girls have fallen asleep. They dreamed of their parents. Diaz smiled and looked at the horse. He decided to free the horse and let him sleep with the girls. The horse did so. Suddenly, Gelaint flew up to Diaz. He asked what had happened. The dove reported that Eldon had conveyed an important message to which he wanted an answer. The message said that a few days ago, Diana visited the territory of Castex in the Lord's mansion. She demanded a meeting with Eldon. The man had to agree. The woman said that she was going to deal with Diaz and demanded that Eldon agree to cooperate. Eldon could not refuse, since it was a royal order. The woman showed an order that disclosed all the conditions and goals of their cooperation. But the order was not drawn up in the royal form. However, the man saw the seal. Eldon knew that the seal only confirms official documents. He assumed that this order was a forgery, but according to the law, with the seal it becomes authentic. Eldon read the order and told Diana that he wanted to discuss it with the advisors, as the conditions were making him nervous. Eldon used hospitality to stall for time, continuing the meeting. The man did not want to cooperate with Diana and wanted to deal with everyone who followed her. One of the advisors asked Eldon to think about the future. Eldon refused to go against Diaz. He had heard of Diaz's achievements and believed that, thanks to him, the plane had a promising future. Eldon would like to refuse Diana, but he first needed to deal with her group. As a result, those present were unable to come to a conclusion. One of the advisors raised his hand and asked the man what he thought of Diaz. The advisor said that Diaz's opinion should be taken into account. The man said that he had already sent him a message and was waiting for a response. Eldon says it is necessary to temporarily suspend the discussion. The advisor says his daughter's letter makes one think. At this moment, Shalon flies into the hall. Eldon praises him for his work and asks what Diaz said. The dove straightened up and said that Eldon could read the letter. Diaz unfolded the letter and read it. He was very surprised. All the advisors began to whisper. One of the advisors asked what was written in the letter. He asked the pigeon to tell. Gelant sighed and said that Diaz had suggested Eldon to start cooperation with Diana. All the advisors were shocked. At this time, Canis approached Klaus and asked what he wanted. Klaus announces that he and Diaz will be fighting, so the man decides to confess his feelings to Canis. Canis screams that he loves her. The girl is surprised and also confesses that she loves him. Diaz, who was watching this scene, is surprised. Canis and Klaus begin to discuss the prospects of their relationship. Canis says that nothing matters to her except her relationship with Klaus. The man hugs Canis. The girls ask what's going on. Aruna comes up to them and takes them away, telling them not to worry. Klaus promises to return from the battle and hugs Canis tighter. The girl cries and says she will wait for him. The dog people lined up, asking what was going on. In the morning, Diaz and Klaus were standing in a field. The man said it was war. Klaus lowered his telescope and agreed with him. 5 days later, it was time for war. Diana stood with her army. Eldon also led the army. Along with Diaz were the dogmen and Ama. Ima accompanied Diaz as a liaison. Their combat readiness amounted to 12 warriors, including Diaz and Klaus. Diaz equipped all the warriors with the necessary equipment. He also prepared the necessary materials and equipment. Klaus notes that Diana's warriors are very numerous. He thinks that they should have asked for reinforcements or accepted Aruna's help. Diaz said that Aruna had an important duty in hiding the village. She needed to protect the village. Klaus agrees, but Klaus would still like to have Eldon on their side. Diaz reports that he asked Eldon to follow the royal order. He says that Eldon has sent inside information and letters containing betrayal many times, but he's still not sure that Eldon is a traitor. So Diaz assumed that Eldon's army was not a fighting force. He responded by prioritizing protection for himself and his people. But he is not sure if Eldon read it correctly. Klaus says he understands. He asks if the plan is moving forward as they discussed. Diaz replies that they are acting according to an agreed-upon plan. He begins to explain their plan. The man was tense. He considered it an advantage that the grave dogs could pinpoint the enemy's location, but he was still unsure whether the plan would work. If the plan fails, Diaz will make a lone attack on Bayarse behind enemy lines, but he decided to hide it from everyone else. The man could have rebuilt the simple yurts and let the enemies pass by as he moved from place to place across the plain. But that choice meant abandoning the twins. The man noticed that, thanks to his care, the girls stopped crying at night because of their parents. He understood that this was very important for them. The man imagined the girls in case the fields were destroyed. He tightened his grip on his weapon and decided that he would definitely protect them. Ima turned to Diaz and pointed to the bell that the enemies had. The man explains that this is a war bell that gives instructions during battle. He says it was used before, but now he considers it an antique. The bell starts ringing. Ima covers her ears. Klaus and Diaz's eyes widen. The bell continues to ring. Diaz says that the continuous blow is a signal for an all-army attack. He asks Ima to run out when the sound stops. Diaz and Klaus look at the enemy in surprise as the bell stops ringing. The man wonders when the attack will come, not the advance. He asks what Diana is planning. Diana and her troops got ready. Diaz also gave the command to all warriors to stand in a fighting stance. He reports that he does not understand the actions of the opponents, but decides to look at them according to the circumstances. He squeezes his weapon tighter. The bell rings and the battle begins. Diaz gives the command to everyone to get ready. Diana's army also stood in a fighting stance. There were 4 troops on Diana's field at once. Everyone stood in anticipation. Diaz raised his axe. Diana's warriors ran forward. Diaz looked at them menacingly. The warriors stopped and began to look at each other. Klaus and Diaz didn't understand why the warriors stopped. Diaz still couldn't understand what was happening. Klaus notices that Diana's escorts ran to the left and right flanks. Diaz can't figure out what this strategy is. He wonders what Diana might have come up with. At this time, Camelots served tea to Eldon. The man thanked the servant. A knight ran up to them and asked what they were doing. Eldon smiles and says it's time for tea. The knight looks at Eldon, dumbfounded. Eldon claims that this is very important, since his father bequeathed to him not to miss tea time. That is why he considered it more important. The knight asks if Eldon really intends to go against the king's orders. Eldon says he is following orders. He says Diana should not forget that he has cooperated with her more than enough. Eldon believes that the elite around her will be enough. He reminded them that there are only 2 opponents. Eldon sets his conditions and continues drinking tea. He finishes it and asks the servant to bring more. Camelos obeys his lord. One of the warriors rubbed the back of his head and thought that something strange was happening, since no one took on this task, even though they paid a lot. The man didn't expect them to fight Diaz. He wasn't going to rush. Then the man turned around and ordered a retreat. His warriors ask the man if he is sure. The man says they cannot defeat Diaz. The man reminds them that Diaz is a good man who protected their country. He also did not understand why Duke Castix's army did not move either. He says that those who want to fight can stay. Everyone obeys the captain and leaves. A man runs up to the captain and asks what they are doing. The captain returns the advance and says goodbye. The man asks why they are leaving. Diaz looks through the telescope and says that the mercenaries also retreated for some reason. He also noticed that Eldon is stalling for time. He believes that Diana's plan has failed. Diaz noticed that only Diana's soldiers were heading towards them. He assesses them and believes that their opponents would be better off retreating. Diaz says they need to change the plan. He explains what they will do. Klaus smiles. Diaz asks Ima to cover her ears for a moment. The man takes a deep breath. Diaz screams very loudly. The knights stop. Aruna heard the battle cry and thought it was good. Aruna tells the dog people that they need to support Diaz. All the dog people agree. At this time, a grandmother was sitting in one of the yurts. She was laying out stones on the floor. And then she walked out of the yurt onto the street where everyone greeted her. They asked how everything went. The old woman replied that everything was fine. Everyone was happy. At this time, Eldon was watching through binoculars. He asked his servant to evaluate the fighting style of Klaus and Diaz. The man said that Diaz is physically strong. About Klaus, he said that he supports Diaz and covers for him. The man was also amazed by the active participation of the small species. He did not expect that the small species would be able to fight, as they were clumsy. Eldon thought that they had underestimated the small species in vain. At this time, Klaus continued to fight. He remembered the promise that Canis had made. At this moment, a knight swung at him. Diaz managed to warn Klaus, and he dodges. Klaus parries the knight's attack and turns to Diaz. The man points out that there is a snake under his feet. Klaus does notice the snake. Diaz says it was very dangerous. He also says they are almost done with Diana's soldiers, but they need to remain vigilant. Diana watched the fight. She was very angry. She didn't understand why they weren't listening to her. She screamed and waved her scepter. Suddenly, an arrow flew at the girl and the scepter fell from her hands. The girl jumped off her horse and tried to understand where the arrow came from. At this time, Aruna was shooting her bow. There were dog people next to her who asked her about Diana. The girl turned to the dog people and asked them to take the scepter and Diana's horse. She decided to drive the woman off the plain. The girl gave the dog people an order and stroked their heads. Aruna ran forward. She decided to scare Diana so that she would not do such things again. Diana tried to run into the forest. Suddenly, an arrow hit the tree in front of her. Diana stopped for only a second and continued running. At that moment, Aruna thought that it would be safer to deal with Diana. She pulled the bowstring and shot the arrow again, but missed, as she was still unsure. Suddenly, Diana was caught by other people. Aruna looked at them, dumbfounded. The man who captured Diana says he didn't expect to meet his target in the woods. They quickly knocked the girl unconscious. Then the man looked at his watch and said they were late. One of the mercenaries says they were late because of the same man. Suddenly, an arrow flies towards them. The mercenaries take out their weapons and try to figure out who attacked them. The man holds Diana and suggests that she is still being pursued by Diaz's group. He asked the attacker to wait and tried to convince him that he and Diaz are friends. He says that they came on the orders of Diaz's apprentice. The man picks up the bag and says that they came on Richard's orders. He asks not to attack their squad anymore. He was still trying to convince the attacker. When the man thought the attack was over, an arrow flew into his bag of money. The bag fell. The man says he understands everything. He says they will leave the money but take Diana. Aruna watches as the mercenaries run away. She picks up the bag and assumes that the man is telling the truth after all. She managed to conduct an assessment of souls. Aruna decides to go back and tell Diaz about Diana. She assumes that Diaz is tired, so she plans to cook him something. The girl began to think about how to please Diaz. She began to think about massage and blush because of her fantasies about Diaz. The girl ran back happily.